All right, welcome to Free Range American Podcast. We're here in South Texas, in good old Bernie, Texas, at Jared's Bar, as usual.
Yes.
Jared and Matt. And we have a wonderful guest today, former Navy SEAL and
Why
awesome.
do you say it like that?
You know, I'm just jealous. You know, you guys got a lot of clout in the streets.
So much clout.
No, but a friend of ours, a very good human, Dan Crenshaw. Thank you so much for taking the time to drive down and see us, man. I'm really excited to sit and chat with you. We've done it a few times on Instagram, and I'm excited.
One of his hidden talents that he just showed us is he knows what words aren't words.
It's true.
Cluppy. Is that a word?
You really changed the standards here, because a second ago you said I apostrophe S was a word.
Yeah. It's the conjunction for I was.
No, it's not.
I don't think it is. He didn't go to college.
He didn't go to college.
All right. I guess it's two against one here.
Did you go to any school ever?
I went to Columbia Southern University.
I guess. Well, let's actually back up. The reason we brought up eyes was because of Matt's microaggression.
Oh,
right?
when he's using eyes plural.
No, you can't use the eyes plural around me,
right?
Because it's offensive,
right? Because you have one eye,
right? It's like me saying arms, because you don't have the use of two arms at the
right?
moment.
So if you could not use that, I won't use eyes,
right?
Well, what do I get to not use?
And now we respect each other's truth. We
respect
each other's truth, which is really important in today's
Wait, what happens?
Of wokeism.
I get my arm back after surgery. What happens?
Then we go back.
You change your offense then.
Then I can just immediately go back to how I was. I can just chameleon it.
Yeah. I mean, really,
neither one of you are allowed to say heavy around me.
Really?
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
this
what about
phone
synonyms
is
of heavy?
Of all of them.
All of them.
Because you're talking about my weight problem.
Well, I'm gonna start off because since we hit the arm thing before we get into Dan, I'm stoked to have this podcast. But I know everybody's gonna hit me up on YouTube and all that. I tore my bicep. I'm completely fine. I get surgery Tuesday. Probably when this comes out, I'll be done with surgery. All good.
You keep doing this. I get surgery Tuesday. You know, I looked up the survivability probability of that surgery.
Yeah.
It's like 4%.
Good. You should make a shirt in my,
That's way worse than coronavirus.
Bicep.
No, 4% survivability.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
For a bicep, huh?
Yeah, that's what I looked up. That's why I was like,
was it reversed?
No, I didn't reverse it.
Did you look at that at Josh Hopkins University?
Yeah, I went to Josh Hopkins University.
How is Josh doing?
It's great. It's his uncle. He lives down in Montgomery, Alabama.
Are you sure you read a book? Are you sure it wasn't nothing?
which is a good point. You reference book as a New York Times bestselling author myself. No, you recently just wrote a book. How has that process been going? Because I know it's fairly arduous, and from flash to bang, and the production side of it, all the way through releasing it and the media tour. Because we spoke back on Instagram when it just first came. How's it going for you, man?
Been going good. We've sales have been crazy. We're on the New York Times bestseller for 10 weeks.
Congratulations! Holy shit! Congratulations!
It was just pretty good because I bashed the New York Times quite a bit in the book and just in my daily life, and I think they've had one.
They didn't give you one then.
One what?
Number one.
No, they never gave me number one.
They won't.
They gave me
number
five.
outsold.
I was best. Yeah. I'm number 2 on audio, and then I was number 2 on audio. That was as high.
They gave you 5.
5 for the hardcover.
Maybe that's their because I was 5 too.
Yeah,
I think that's their we're like, we have to give it to these conservatives. We can't give them on. I outsold, I'm sure as you, like 10x the second or first place.
I probably didn't, honestly, because I mean, just it depends on who you're competing with at any given time.
True.
And like we had like Untamed, like that book is crazy. And then you got Michelle Obama, she's selling 20,000 a week. I mean, it's and now White Fragility sells 100,000 a week, and so
that book.
That is
wow.
Wow, I haven't heard about that one.
You haven't heard about White Fragility?
I could assume
we can deep
what it
dive
is.
into that later.
Oof, it's a book.
How's it been going right now? Because I feel like the world is crazy. The nation is kind of crazy right now. There's all this hyperbole. There's all this like slander. There's these like people focusing on politics that are creating issues rather than solving the complex issues that are going on in our society right now. Like, what's it like being representative in that zone? Like, is it just, I can't believe how frustrating, but I commend you for trying to make a difference and have a voice for veterans and the pro-Second Amendment community.
It's frustrating because you're a bit helpless. And there's a lot of, everybody listening right now is thinking the same thing. When are Republicans going to do something about this? And I get that sentiment. And I think there's a fair critique that not enough Republicans are constantly speaking out against the mob. I do as much as I can. We do have lots of other like tasks as a representative besides just like the messaging. I personally take the messaging part very seriously. I run my office almost like a communications office, almost primarily because Nancy Pelosi doesn't have us in session, so we're not doing legislation. We're in the minority, so they're not going to accept our ideas for legislation anyway.
Yeah.
And so part of leadership and part of representing is, well, a huge part of it is communicating. And so this is why I take this stuff so seriously. It's why I have my own podcast. It's why I wrote a book. By the way, that book is called Fortitude. I forgot to say that.
Yeah.
American Resilience in the Era of Outrage. And the book was unfortunately very prescient on what's going on right now. It foretold this story that's happening right in front of us. Because a lot of us have been writing about this for a long time, this sort of disintegration of America.
Yeah.
And it has a long history to it. People think it's just a bunch of spoiled kids, and they got some ideas in their heads. And it's part of that's true, but that's only part of the story. This goes back, I think there's multiple threads here that kind of come together to attack the American story. And the last chapter in my book is literally about what's happening right now, this sort of attack on American history, attack on the American founding, attack on America itself, the Americanism that we hold dear. This notion that the Declaration of Independence is a good thing. This notion that the Constitution is a good thing. This notion that Western Enlightenment ideals of individual liberty, personal property rights, actual unalienable rights that can't be infringed upon, and that government is there to protect both against government and from other people. These are very liberal ideals that are being torn apart. And so that comes, where does that come from? You can go all the way back to the French Revolution for how that happened, and then into Marxism, and then into the Soviet Union and their propaganda into America over the course of the 20th century that led to the uprising in the 60s, which is very similar to what we're seeing now.
Right.
But then there's another thread too. And that other thread, I think, is progressivism itself. So progressivism started under Woodrow Wilson as this sort of hatred of hatred of the Constitution. They also didn't like communists. They're not like communists, but they're centralized controllers. They loved, and by the way, like people like FDR, Woodrow Wilson, they were very sympathetic to fascism. They loved Mussolini's fascism. It was only until fascism became equated with Nazism that they were like, well, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, maybe.
So when fascism became racist, they stood on the right side of that, and we fought the Nazis, and that's a good thing. But don't forget that they were fascists themselves. They wanted centralized control. They said Woodrow Wilson said the Constitution was outdated. We shouldn't use it. We should put journalists in jail when they dissent. And they did. They put thousands of journalists in jail. People wonder, can this ever happen here? It did happen here. Happened here in the early 1900s with Woodrow Wilson. That's by the way, that's like when Princeton was like, hey, let's remove Woodrow Wilson from our school. That's the only one where I was like, that's a good idea. That guy's a bad dude. He was very racist. He believed in the progressivism to them meant like scientific control over society.
I mean, you can see it like that side wants control. Look at what happened the last 120 days. They want as much as they can that will allow.
And that hasn't changed for a century, right? That thread of progressivism hasn't changed for a century. We want scientists and academics to control everything about you. We don't believe that you can possibly have different preferences. We don't believe that people are capable of self-governance. The Constitution is outdated. This is an original progressive idea. Over time, they kind of, spruced it up a little bit. And in order to do that, eventually evolved into identity politics. And so let's look at the history of that.
Yeah.
1960s, a guy named Herbert Marcuse of the New Left, they really put this formula out there for the leftists. And now these were Marxists. But they're like, how are we going to get Marxism to take hold in a place where the working class seems kind of happy, right? You're talking about 1950s, 1960s America. The working class isn't like devastated.
Right.
So how do we get them to rise up and destroy the 1% and take over the means of production? Well, they have to move into identity politics. That's how. Because in the end, you're just building a coalition of people who feel oppressed and disenchanted.
No, it's a fast way to unite.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how
They need 51%.
Humans will unite faster with hate than they will with anything else.
Well, it's a far more easy energy and it's less complicated because you base off emotion and not logic.
Yeah, when you place blame on something and then give people the means to hate that because you've now given
provide them a story.
Yes,
you provide them a story, and it's not that hard in America because we do have a bad history, and we've got to deal with that. Where groups like the Black community were clearly subjugated and oppressed. And we
Yeah,
moved
100%.
past
I mean,
that.
if you look back in after World War II and what we did as far as, loans and grants to the African American community and the Black community, it was a travesty, right? And that's the way I look at it. It's like, for me, it's regressive in nature. A lot of this narrative is because we're focusing on where we were rather than where we're at
Yeah,
today.
or
And
what are
I'd
we
rather
gonna
solve
do?
the complex issues that we're dealing with today rather than being regressive and looking
Right.
at what had happened. It's like, and I made that analogy earlier where I could go back and judge 15-year-old Matt insanely high, and I made lots of mistakes. I made statements I probably shouldn't have, but that's not who I am today. I took those learnings and I took experience through life and education and applied those to critical thinking, and that is what guided me today to be more of a free thinker and more accepting across a global community, especially with technology and how versed we are with different cultures and all these things. And it's hyper bizarre for me that we're, as a nation, focusing on the past rather than this is where we're at the present. Let's focus on the future and create a free society. Let's create the quality of life for the American public that is the best, and sustainability. Like, we can't just go into this notion of, everything is fucking sunshine and rainbows.
But all
It
this
doesn't exist.
noise that's all it is it's noise. Nobody's out here offering solutions. I haven't seen anybody on that side say,
That's the main
hey,
problem with the movement.
hey,
they don't want solutions.
yeah,
and I can
there's
get into that in a
hey,
second.
this is what would help. This is what would make us happy. It's just noise. It's
Power.
just, I'm mad.
It's-
I'm mad. I'm going to break things because I'm mad.
You can't have solutions because their ultimate goal is power. And so because of our real actual history, right? There's a real history with oppressing communities. And so it was very easy for the left to basically continue that narrative even after the civil rights era. Okay? And this is devastating because what you do is you lock a people based on immutable characteristics, you lock a person into a victimhood narrative. Right? You can never escape it.
Yeah.
And again, what I write about in my book is I'm not saying victimhood isn't real. It can be real. But there's a story you tell yourself after something bad has happened to you. And now you can because self-pity is easy.
Of course.
Right? And it's easy to explain your shortcomings if somebody else
To make
did
an
it to you.
excuse as
Yeah,
well.
It's easy.
You can,
And again, even if it's true, don't do it. Right? Because if I care about somebody, if you're raising a child, of course you're going to teach them these things. Hey, even if it's true, don't act that way because it's dangerous for your own psychological well-being. And I want you to succeed. And guess what? In our country in today's day and age, you can succeed. That is
Yes.
true. If you make certain decisions and if you have a certain mentality, guaranteed you will succeed. That's not just my opinion. That's all in the data from liberal think tanks, by the way. Basically, finish high school, have kids after 21 or before you're married, after you're married, and get a job, any job. It's almost guaranteed you will not be in poverty. That is fundamentally true in America and remains so. But
decision making.
Yeah, but
And the consequences for decisions.
right,
The
and
Hodge twins did a great piece on this.
And people start at different levels. Like there's no denying that. There's different advantages, but it is not necessarily based on immutable characteristics. But there's this notion, identity politics relies on this notion that it is based on group power. And that the only way to rectify it is to give another group power over another group. And if you're in politics, it's a very powerful message. Vote for me, I'm going to give you power over that group.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful message. And it's easy, and they want to build that coalition. And so again, these threads are coming together. Identity politics, Marxism, and so it's become sort of this is a Dinesh D'Souza term, but like identitarian socialism.
Mhm.
And it combines with progressivism. That doesn't like a republic. They want a pure democracy. And so what are they? So what does that mean? It means pack the Supreme Court, get rid of the Electoral College, add more senators from liberal states. Like that's why we voted to make Washington, D.C. a state last week. Democrats all wanted to make Washington, D.C. a state. It's a pure power grab.
Did it get passed?
Well, by the House, yes.
And then it'll go to
But
the
imagine
Senate.
if they win the Senate and they win the presidency, Washington, D.C. will be, now it still has to have a constitutional change. So that's
been a movement for a long time, right?
Well, they
Taxation
want
without
that because of-
representation.
Yeah, it's more signaling. But what I pointed out at the time was like, hey guys, America is having a hard time right now, and we're taking our 2 days back in session to vote on Washington D.C. being a state.
Yeah, you're.
Give me a break.
I have a really hard question for you. Then I don't think you'd probably have the answer. But then, how do you? Because I think there's so many dynamics that play into this, as far as social media and all these constructs that people have developed in their own essence of how do I, feel wanted by this tribal mentality that kind of is ingrained from us since we were fucking lobsters, whatever, how long ago. But it's like, how do we?
You were a lobster.
I was.
You were
I'm
a
still a
lobster.
lobster.
Navy SEALs invented lobster.
They sure did. But like, how do you play into that where it's not? The overall success and the goal should not be empowering one party left or right. For me, it would be, how do we make the American people succeed? And the more and more people that are identifying with identity politics and say, like, and that's my hardest part, because I'm a conservative American, but people automatically believe with that labeling that every thought process and every belief system that I have is in line with said power or whoever represents me, which is incorrect. I'm sure you and I have a lot of things not in common, a lot in common. And that's always where I go back to, like, you have to have those good critical conversations. But the problem is social media with clickbait and these baited titles, people are just going to conform to who is the most accepting group. And the louder the group, the more you're like, oh, well, if I go in the riots and, watching down with the BLM sign on my chest, then I'm going to get love on social media. And the injustice in that is not because you actually think Black Lives Matter. The injustice is because you're doing it for your own self-affirmation, for
It's
a
virtue
community.
signaling.
It's virtue signaling.
All
100%.
the people in the last 10 or 15 days that have called me racist were well-off middle-aged white women.
Well,
Yeah, they're
I've
calling
said-
a lot of black police racists too.
I
Notice
know.
that? There's like countless videos
It's like-
of these white people
I wanted to
screaming
make,
at black police officers. And like, guys, at this point, something has been corrupted in this narrative.
Yeah, now you're broken.
This doesn't. It defies reason now, because in this, and they would explain. And they have a lot of trouble explaining it. They start to get very angry when you point this out, because there is no real
There's no explanation.
But it starts to sound kind of like the ramblings of a crazy person. They say, no. Well, they're part of the oppressive structures, right? And then they can never define what that means. And like, okay, well, how do we fight it? How do we fight this oppressive structure together? Can you help me define it? Can we go into some detail, or are we just chasing ghosts?
Yeah.
And this is the point about never finding a solution, because
It's not about the data. It's never been about the data.
It's never been about the data, but it's not about solutions either. Because we can agree on, especially the more libertarian among us, like maybe we should have less laws that the police have to enforce.
Yes.
Because there's this talk about, well, why didn't the police, at that Wendy's in Georgia, why didn't they just give them an Uber? Well, it's a good question. But the thing is that it's illegal for the police to do that.
Yeah.
The police get in trouble for doing that. And you put body cams on them, then they definitely can't do that, because now they'll get in trouble and maybe, lose their job, because now we know that they gave that guy an Uber, right?
Yeah.
Now,
if you
could
just
change
said
the
this,
law,
like,
but you could change the law and say, hey, you know what? For drunk drivers, just put them in an Uber. You could change the law. Now, maybe that's a good idea, maybe it isn't, but let's have that debate in a democratic way.
If everybody collectively came together and said, we want this to be a solution.
Yeah.
We want this. We're not saying that it's gonna deter people. You're probably gonna have a spike in drunk driving cases, because people know that the consequence is lessened.
Or maybe you take them to court later. Maybe the consequences are the same. You just don't wrap them up and put them in handcuffs. I don't know. In any case, it's a democratic process that actually has to happen.
I'll give you a good example. Like there was a body cam going around about a month ago of a guy, a cop had pulled a woman over in a parking lot for a taillight infraction, and she wanted to be rude and things like that. And of course, he escalated the situation based on the power he had. Okay, you want to be rude, now get out of the car.
She
doesn't want to get out of the car.
All experienced that to a large extent. It does happen. There's no denying that.
It comes down to now he's tasing her, and this is a 40 to 50-year-old woman.
Highly
it's like
unnecessary.
you had her license plate. You told her that she was going to get a ticket, and she was refusing the ticket. Okay, at that point, be like, hey, I don't have time for this. I'll show up at your doorstep with my supervisor in a few hours, because we know where you live. You got your car registration. It's like, why escalate the situation?
There's other
at that point?
tactics.
It's like, but you could even come out tomorrow and say, okay, states, you can now tell cops not to pull anybody over for tag infractions. Are they going to do that? No, they need the fucking income.
Well, it's not up to cops, though. It's not up to cops. It's up to policymakers. And like the cops are the ones enforcing this. And I've talked to so many cops about this. They're like, it is illegal for me not to do anything. It's illegal. And it's illegal for me not to follow procedure. And if you don't like procedure, you've got to change it. And so we're attacking the wrong people in many ways, which is why it's so gross to see these Democrat mayors all over the country just throw their cops under the bus. And it's like,
Dude,
whoa, whoa,
Portland
whoa. It was
is
you
the
and your city
worst.
council
Yes.
that told them to do
Well,
this.
isn't that the systemic problem from my eyes, at least, is whereas like, when we're passing legislation and law and all these things, it's like we bury these things under this, 90-page document, which you would know extraordinary more amounts than me. But like, why can't we pass something that's more black and white instead of hiding 70 different issues in one thing, right?
Yeah.
And just being like, this is what, as a free society, we believe in. And in creating, and we talked about this in a previous episode, was like the whole defund the police movement is like, fund the police, man. Let's give them the proper resources, the proper funding, get quality individuals in there who act on law that is voted in by the people. But that's where that conversation happens. I just don't think
If you're paying a
people
mall
fucking
cop
care.
salary, you're gonna fucking get a mall cop.
Well,
If you're
and I'm
paying
sure all of
a
us
premium salary, you're gonna get a much more better, a better product.
There's a bunch of issues there I want to address.
Yeah, please.
But right where you hit right before we did this is nobody is finger pointing at the people actually responsible for this. Like you
Right,
said,
right.
the city council and the mayor
Right.
that made the policy. Nobody is upseating these people and
And that's
going,
the question,
you
like-
have failed at your job. You
Right.
failed. Like,
No, because they're very good at blaming. The Democrats in general are excellent at this. You see it in New York
Pointing and
with
blaming.
coronavirus. Like, but it's amazing how skillful they are at it. They're not that skilled. It's just that they have institutions like the media that will perpetuate those. That's a different issue. A couple of things of what you said. Well, actually, I want to finish my point about
Please.
not finding a solution, and it is related to your question about why don't we just vote on one issue at a time as opposed to packages.
Okay.
So it is related. So the crime or the police reform bill, right? Senator Tim Scott, Republican, out of South Carolina, was the lead on our bill on the Republican side. Very similar in many ways to the Democrat bill. The Democrat bill wasn't that crazy. There was just some things that we just couldn't vote for. Specifically, just erasing qualified immunity. Qualified immunity, you can make a very good libertarian argument that needs to be reformed.
What's qualified immunity?
Oh, in the simplest terms, it basically prevents you from being able to sue a police officer personally for bad civil conduct.
Okay.
Okay. Now, there's a decent argument to be made that it protects police too much. The data doesn't quite show that. I've had this conversation with my own Houston Police Union, and so it's a complicated discussion, and it needs to be had. It's also never been written in law. Okay, it's the consequence of many court decisions over time. So there's a decent and reasonable conversation to be had about qualified immunity. Like, just because you're a police officer, are you immune to the same, I guess, criticisms and
Yes.
immune to prosecution that a normal citizen would face prosecution for? That's a decent question. And we need to figure out if that's true, because equality means a lot of things, and one of those is reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
Reciprocity is an important, and I think if you're trying to take what the anger is on the streets in its best possible form, now it never presents itself this way, but if you're trying to understand it, I think in the most gracious possible way, people feel, and in the Black community, people feel like there's a lack of reciprocity. They feel like the police can get away with a lot more than they can get away with. And if that's true, that's a fair argument. You know what? Again, I think a lot of us would probably agree with that. There's that story isn't just in the Black community. I think it's in many communities. That's a fair thing to look at. It is, but we need to be proportionate.
Yeah,
I think burning cities down is an excessively disproportionate reaction to that.
not a solution at all.
And because there's this other notion that only one community grows up being afraid of the police. That's not true. I was always taught to fear the police.
Mhm.
Always. Like, my heart stops every time I see a cop car. Every time. I don't know if that's healthy or unhealthy. It just is.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. And so the point is, maybe there's a conversation to be had about equality of reciprocity as a fundamental founding ideal that our country is founded on. When we say equality, it means certain things. And that's a fair thing to have a conversation about. And so that's where qualified immunity honestly comes into play. Anyway, the point is the legislation wasn't that far off, but Democrats would not vote on the things we agreed on. This happens all the time.
Yeah.
And this is a pure power play. And so how do you change it? I don't know.
Start shelling some of
I
these
don't
people
know.
out of the house.
It's easy to say, hey, Yeah, but everybody says that, and it's like it's not going to change it.
Yeah, you're just going to get the same.
Because the system itself is designed that way, and it's not clear that a bunch of different people would do it any other way. Because honestly, the reason you package a bunch of stuff together, it's usually because just for the sake of time, and so. And the party in charge of the House, in this case, the Democrats, they don't care about making this stuff into law. They care about appeasing their base. And that's not going to change. I don't care who you vote in or out. It's just not going to change. And so they don't care that we agree on 80% of the legislation that they might put forth. And we could, citizens should rise up and say, hey, wait, hold on. You guys agree on 80%? So why don't you just cut out the rest of the 20%?
Yeah, and then we'll
get it through the
work
Senate,
on that, and
get
then
it to the
Senate.
president.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Democrats say no. And I'm sure that, this is my only experience in the House, so I know this to be true on basically every piece of legislation. Now, they might say the same is true when Republicans were in charge, and they might be very well be right. You'd have to look for a time when, which I guess there is, when Obama's president, maybe the Democrats have the Senate, we have the House. Maybe that happens too, but there's a balanced conversation to be had. It can't be like one issue, one vote, because then we would just
but also,
constantly
too, it
be
seems
voting,
like
and it would be kind of
none
crazy.
of these people give a shit anymore. Like, I was there for the NDAA signing, and Ted Cruz had to stop in the middle of it to put an announcement out to say, hey, show up. You have to vote on this. Like, you're a U.S. Senator voting on the NDAA, and he had to call all of you to come in here and vote on something that was scheduled and required, like, for the country. Like, this is fucking bullshit.
Well, that's a little odd. I don't. There might be more to that story. Like maybe it was an unexpected vote, but people show up. Nobody wants to have a missed vote on their voting record.
I mean, they kept running in the door and giving their vote. Once
there might have been something else going on.
I don't know. It did not seem organized. It did not seem professional at all. Like, people were, you see attitudes in there and scoffing, and it's just like, you guys
toxic.
Are fucking gross.
It's toxic, and it's not. It's a weird environment. Like I smile at AOC when I see her.
Yeah,
yeah,
I would. But I mean, I'm trying to get a date.
Okay. I'm not going to take this bait.
His words, not yours.
AOC in particular is actually very nice in person. She's been very mean on Twitter.
She's been quiet for a while.
But then other Democrats they have a visceral hatred for me. I think AOC kind of sees it as a game.
Why do you think that a lot of people on the Democratic side have such a visceral hate for you?
Because I'm extremely outspoken, and I call out a lot a lot of BS.
And I
have these videos that go
higher
very
bona fides than they ever will either.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. I don't, because of just veterans.
Just in general.
Yeah.
I mean, look at some of the backgrounds of some of these people. They're not. So, they're not vast when it comes to world problems, other countries actually experience. I mean, that's the arguments I get into with a lot of people from my hometown is none of them have ever left the country. They don't know what customs is like going into DJ in Africa. Mm-hmm. They don't know what it's like seeing, how Iraq operates with a very, light police force and not a lot of, there's
perspective. Perspective is important. I don't, that's not why they don't. They're not. It's the thought process doesn't go that deep with them. There's no jealousy. Not everybody, but a lot of people in Congress are fairly accomplished to an extraordinary degree. You meet a lot of interesting people. The issue is Democrats are used to fighting a very easy opponent that doesn't know how to fight back, and we do have a new generation of Republicans that understands their arguments better than they do. I'm educated in their institutions. I've lived in the liberal bubble for so long. I understand it very well. I know exactly what they think, and they have no idea what we think. And that's an important tool. Now, we're so far behind as conservatives, just over years and years and years of losing arguments, that we've got a lot of catching up to do. And we may lose a lot before we gain a lot. But I think we're on track to gain a lot because we've got a lot of really smart minds and new politicians coming in, especially this cycle, that are worth supporting and can change the perception and make the arguments a heck of a lot better. So I'm optimistic, even though this is a bad time in America. I mean, it's not since the 60s that we've seen something like this. It's almost like this is cyclical.
Like at the end of the day, though, you see so many of these hard opinions on the reps. It's like, are they really representing their people, or are they representing their own thought?
Well, that's an interesting question. So I do think they represent their people. No politician is scared of anything but their voters. That remains true, and that's not something people like to hear because most people would say their Congress is full of a bunch of clowns. And,
no, I agree with you, not to cut you off, but I agree with that statement because I think, but the problem there is educating the general public as far as what it means. And I think a lot of progressives and, you go to the coastal cities, in my opinion, grew up in Santa Barbara, California, a very liberal town. A lot of people are basing their decision-making off of empathetic, emotional decisions. They're not bad people. They're great people. They just have this lack of understanding of reality in the context of what this means for the nation and the vast diversity in the United States. Right. I mean, what I grew up knowing for 17 years in Santa Barbara, California, like I might have been swayed to think other things until I went to Georgia, and then I went to, Kansas, and then I started going to all these different places, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a hyper-diverse nation that requires state law and all these other things to represent the people in their local rural communities, the big cities, and all of that. And it's like one size doesn't fit all.
The diversity of preference is a big thing that people don't understand enough of. Like, why are you so obsessed with telling other people how to live?
Yeah, I don't understand that either.
Why is that a thing for so many people?
Right.
They don't. No.
Well, because I look at it like that, even on the gun side of the house, right? It'd be like, someone would be like, well, why would you need an AR-15 when they're living in a condo, a $2 million condo in New York City? Yeah. Okay, that's based off
with a doorman, with security.
Why do you need a car?
To get in?
A car can kill a lot of people.
And that's the perspective based off of their own development and constructs that they've had over years and years of their habitual behavior and where they grew up. And it's like, but you don't know what it's like to be a rancher in Texas and then having illegal immigrants that are drug trafficking with AK-47s across your property. Like, it is such a polarizing, different sense of reality that you have to have some understanding of, like, we just live separate lives. We're all under the federal government in the United States of America, but, dude, completely different realities.
Right. In a sense, we share a broad culture, and it's important to understand what that culture is, and how it's derived from our founding documents and the basics of Western civilization. But within that culture, there's a multitude of other cultures. Like, there's a different Texan culture than there is in New York, and that's fair to say. But there's also a lot of crossover. And we're kind of losing that crossover, or it's almost like we're trying to lose that crossover. Again, one of the tenets of the left is multiculturalism, but to an extreme degree. And I think that's very dangerous. I think it's very divisive, because what they mean, and we have to kind of define what we're talking about, because again, we do have different cultures: Texas, California, Santa Barbara. I mean, it goes on in Santa Barbara. I like Santa Barbara a lot.
No, it's one of my favorite towns, man. I visit there all the time. Shout out to Chicken Ranch, my favorite restaurant of all time in Santa Barbara, man. That place is so good.
Chicken Ranch, man.
Matt, I love you, buddy.
I just got hungry. I want to go to Chicken Ranch.
But that's me, like, because I know that they're fairly liberal.
Not as liberal as you're saying it is.
No, they're like they're surfer liberals. They're like not the angry ones that throw plates at you. They're just like, let's like smoke weed and surf, and I'm like, you guys are cool as shit. But yeah, that's the thing with this multiculturalism and stuff. And I think that the people reference other societies like Japan, but that's like a homogenous society.
It's extremely homogenous. And they love Sweden. I'm like, so you love the 99% white population that is very monoculture.
It's a bad reference.
You cannot, this is another thing. Everybody tries to compare. Oh, but these guys do this. Okay, there are certain things you can do when the population is 13 million.
Right.
We're 333 million.
13 million homogenous society is drastically different than having, Puerto Ricans, New Yorkers, Mexican Americans that come from Texas. Like the diversity, right?
And that's very diverse.
And that's why I've taken a very prominent stance on the nationalistic side of things. And I'm not saying, whatever, but like, the flag represents diversity and unity under the freedom of thought and the freedom of independence and whatever you want to do with your life, right? And
it's a freedom of the individual type of culture, and it's so important. And again, those cultural tenets, people don't even think about how to define them, and because they're kind of hard to define. There's some good books out there recently that written by some was it Rich Lowry, I think. And I can't remember the title, but it's about like the nationalism is not a bad word. It's an okay word. You just have to define it correctly. If you define it in terms of skin color, well, then it's a bad word, okay, and deservedly so. but it's not defined in terms of skin color. The only colors that matter are the red, white, and blue. It's
Agreed.
defined in terms of a creed, this sort of American ethos. And like the last chapter in my book, I write the American ethos, and it's geared towards a sense of fortitude, because that's the name of the book, and mental toughness. But like there are certain things that make us American, and the whole beauty of America is that anybody can become American, but we desire that you assimilate into Americanism.
Now, like there isn't another country that compares to us, where every country from all over the world comes to live here.
You cannot become French. You cannot become French. It's just not how French works.
No.
Yeah.
You can't.
You can't-
British, you can kind of become British. Like
You can't
they
even
have
become
a little
Hawaiian, bro. You know how the islands are. They're like,
it's
get
different.
out.
You can't.
Yeah.
You just can't. No,
I know that's a
true.
compliment, because it's very island mentality. It's very tribal based, and that's like a microcosmic example of like, you're a SEAL and shit, and I don't know if you guys have a creed, but like the Ranger Creed,
SEAL and
like
shit.
that's how I look on a larger scale of what the United States of America and the red, white, and blue stands for. Is when I signed up to be a Ranger and passed selection, and I went to my unit, I knew verbatim the Ranger Creed. And my love and passion was for being a Ranger. Now, who was a Ranger? Black, white, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, everything. I'm gay,
Samoans.
straight.
It's a set of ideals that bring you together.
It's the ideals that brought us together. And it was, the component wasn't referencing racism or an ideological perspective that a skin color or gender is better than the other. It was one mission, one fight. And that's how I look at the United States of America. Is we can still be diverse, but the second we lose sight of this kind of, and I'll use that term nationalistic, and I think that there's a lot of, trepidation saying that for a lot of people, is that's what the flag stands for, is diversity.
Right.
And that's why we're such a fucking great nation, why we're so large, is because we have this multitude of generations of diversity that have come together for free speech and fucking quality of life. And when we start losing that, I get really, really nervous, to be honest with you, because the last thing I ever want is...
I mean, those ideals are under attack in a profound way.
Oh, absolutely.
In a very profound way. Again, the entire last chapter of my book, which was not even written in this time, written a year ago, is dedicated to this notion that these narratives have created an attack on the American spirit itself.
Yes.
And this is when we again, it's one thing to want to tear down Confederate statues. You're not going to get me to defend Confederacy. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the Union.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's
We're all the Union.
yeah.
We won.
And now I want it to be
Yeah,
I want it to be done in
don't
a
really
more
understand.
coherent way.
I don't understand. Yeah, I've never seen a justifying argument about it. Which
No,
really,
it depends. It depends on how the statue was built. Like, because some of these statues were built just to be dicks.
stir up shit.
Yeah, and
I
maybe
don't
there should be
understand the argument to keep the flag, the Confederate
Yeah.
flag.
And-
It's
well,
like why?
yeah.
Why?
Yeah,
Like-
no, it means something different to some people. There's an honest and logical argument to be had about that. Doesn't need to be mob. But again, you're just not going to get me to defend it because it doesn't mean anything to me in particular. So that's not, but let's move past that, and then everything else. So Columbus. And it's like, and it gets back to Matt's point about, okay, well, you did something bad, so maybe you should change your name and change your face and get like face off. Like change change everything
here's
about
the thing.
yourself.
None of us were alive then. It's like we have no control over that, but we've been progressing. 15 years ago, it was openly and culturally accepted to not like gay people.
Yeah.
And people don't realize how fast we have flipped this it was wildly popular, and you were accepted by a bigger group if you were like, yeah, I'm not for that.
Yeah, but even in
that
our
was only
generation,
15 years ago.
Yeah,
Like,
that's kind of true. I mean, even in our generation, I don't think I was ever told not to like gay people. You know what I mean? Anyway, the point is it flips very fast.
yes,
yeah.
we as an entire society went the opposite way and said,
But
okay,
very
wait,
quickly.
maybe we handled this bad.
Yeah,
And we
because-
fixed it. So it's like, why aren't we focusing on things like that? Going,
Right.
okay,
Let's
none
find
of us were
definable-
alive during these
Let's
times.
find
of-
definable systems of oppression. This is the problem. You got to find a definable system of oppression. Jim Crow laws are a definable system of oppression. Segregation is a definable system of oppression. And are there patterns that occur after that? Yes, there's an argument to
their
be made.
fixes are continually segregating.
Right.
The Black
That's the
National
problem.
Anthem.
That's the problem.
oh wait, we need two national anthems
Right.
now.
It's exactly. It goes completely the wrong direction.
You're curing racism by increasing segregation.
It's not a good thing. It's completely the wrong direction.
Yeah, the black only portion of CHOP.
But that's a good segue into a question I have for you. It's like when I look at that and the consistency of like, dividing people per se, I think the media plays into that a lot because like when I look at the press secretary going on and talking about issues, and we have a crisis, we have a pandemic, not only from a viral perspective, but an economic fallout that is probably going to, you'd be well versed in this more than me, but I would say at least 3 to 5 years, we're going to feel the economic like taxation of all of this stuff and what we're doing. Yet we have journalists, defined journalists, asking about the Confederate flag. And for me, I look at things in prioritizations of work effort. It's why I've been good at business, is because I look, let's fucking tackle.
It's a very military thing to do.
Yeah, like I'm not going to have an argument about where I want to eat with my wife when there is a bear in my house, right? Like I know that's
which happens way more often than you think.
There's a lot of bears in Texas.
You know what's a fucking really good example of this though? Is anybody wants to see this visually? The best example I've seen lately is look at the articles about the couple in Illinois?
Missouri.
You're
talking about
just look, yes.
Ken and Karen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at
I don't know their real names.
Look at those. Look at the articles across the media spectrum and look at the article title and how right and left the title itself changes. Because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, I have so many left and liberal friends. I see when they post their version of the article, then I see when our side of people post our version. And it's, it goes from two people protecting their home with their rights to, crazy people aim guns at peaceful protesters to
it's like what these
protesters break gates to assaults.
Yeah, I tweeted about this today.
Polarizing.
And it's like, it's probably something very profound. I could pull it up. But I mean, I said exactly what you would think I would say. It's like we're in this is extremely dangerous.
An information war.
Well, no, but it's clearly gone beyond an information war at this point because what you have is, so a mob broke through a gated community and marched onto property, and this couple, I mean, they look kind of funny and brandishing weapons, fine, but they didn't. That's all they did. They're just like, don't come in here, don't mess with us.
Yeah,
because they're scared as hell. You've got a very angry, large group of people who broke into your gated community. All right.
Just burned the fucking
right
the neighborhood down.
And put this in the context of a country getting burned by angry mobs.
Yes.
All right. They didn't shoot anybody. They didn't fire their guns. Nothing. And then the government, the district attorney, decided that they should have their guns confiscated after that. This is a very scary thing.
Terrifying.
It's like now we've gotten into a whole new world here. And California, which is a decision in California that just happened too, which is the people being arrested for a hate crime because they painted over the paint of the Black Lives Matter movement.
How's that a hate
It's like
crime?
this is an inconsistent application of the law.
It's one opinion versus another.
This is deeply unconstitutional.
It's level playing ground.
Cannot do this. You can scream and yell at those people. You can call them whatever names you want.
Yes.
You can cancel. You can tell people not to shop at their businesses. You can do all this. All of this is okay. I don't like a lot of it, but it's all okay according to a free society, according to our institutions that are very sacred, because we have rules that we live by, and people have forgotten the rules. This is the problem. But you can't call it a hate crime. When you have an inconsistent application of the law, that's unconstitutional.
Yep.
And I hope Attorney General Barr looks into these things and says, no, you cannot do the federal government does have the right to intervene in these things. What worries me is when do we not have Attorney General Barr? Because that guy's he's awesome.
Yeah.
But when we don't have him, and because I think he will start to do the right things on this stuff as he sees, because this is the first time, in the last couple of days, this is the first time the government has now started to take this side. This is really problematic. This has crossed a line, and it's very scary. Federal government has to step in, and it does have the authority. That is in the Constitution, because the federal government's. Go ahead.
I'm going to say this goes back to the information war. The district attorney in Missouri is bringing these people up on charges because the narrative, the media weaved. So like when you actually go in and look at the map of their house and the gate that mob broke through, they essentially, just like you would break through my gate to come into my house, it was not a road like they call it. It was
that was a driveway?
Look at the overhead,
That was a driveway?
it was a driveway.
That's
and they
even
were
worse.
coming up the
so like
the reverse side of the house, and they
you could
broke the
argue
gate
that
in
they
there.
were very, what's the word, that they restrained themselves quite a bit.
Yeah. That's
It's
what I
like-
mean. But
Like,
that,
I live in
that
I
narrative,
live in a double gated community, so I have a gate and then a gate, and if people are on my property, I would have intervened in the same sense because that's
exactly.
It's
But
the castle law. I have a lot of things, and I
Yeah.
obviously wouldn't just
That
shoot people that
narrative-
are there, but I would definitely signify to them that there is a
Yeah.
process of escalation of force
Right.
will be implemented based off of your own action on my property. Now, if you leave and you want to go protest peacefully, that is your right. I'm all about it. You can say things that I disagree with. But
don't come on my
You
land.
can't come on the property.
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
a
But
sacred
this-
right. Again, there's
Yeah.
sacred institutions. And by institution means it's not just a building, right? It's a set of ideas. These things matter quite a bit. And the institutions of Western civilization are being deconstructed in really profound ways. Personal property being one of them, and meritocracies being one of them. These are very important institutions. They allow a free society to live together and to succeed. And the most prosperous, whether we agree or not, objectively speaking, this is the most prosperous moment in in American human history. And it's not perfect. We're humans.
we're humans. It's never going to be perfect. It's genetically encoded that there's going to be a lot of assholes
and we
out
can
there.
strive for perfection. Like, conservatism is not about just conserving the status quo. It's never been what conservatism is about. Conservatism is about progressing, but within a set of limiting principles.
With logical understanding. That's what the term conservative means, is like I'm going to be conservative in my approach, meaning I won't base it off
Right.
of emotional, I'll base it off logic. That's why I call myself not a Republican, call myself a conservative, because I might be wrong in a lot of things, but I'm open to open conversation and developing my ideas as I progress through this whatever life that I have until I turn into
But the
dust.
more important element, limiting principles. There's a set of questions that you kind of ask yourself as a conservative. And liberals don't ask themselves these questions. Liberals are always like, what feels good right now?
Yeah.
What can I do to help
It's
people?
emotionally based, yeah.
I want to help people. And that's and I'm giving them a lot of grace right now.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the most, the best liberals out there. I just want to help people get better. And they will, whatever ideas presented to them in the simplest form to help people, they'll just give them money. Okay, fine, give them money, do that. But a conservative asks a different questions.
Well, what does that do?
Yeah, the conservative asks, does it feel good or do good? That's a good question to ask. The conservative asks, what does this do to the fiscal trajectory of an entire country? That's a good question to ask, okay? The conservative asks, are we taking freedom away or giving it to them? That's a good question to ask. Now, sometimes you want to take freedom away, right? Like, for instance, I don't think maybe the speed limit should be 120 miles an hour. Because then a bunch of jerks would go out there. I'm getting really blank looks from you guys. You're like, no, it should be.
Well, I mean,
no,
I've
I agree.
often wondered this because, the Autobahn, if you compared.
Bad example, maybe, but let me. I'm going to use it anyway.
No, I get it.
The point is that there's rules of the road,
Yeah.
and we infringe on your freedom to do whatever the hell you want. Because if we don't, you'll infringe on somebody else's freedom. But that's the
Yes.
question, and that's an important thing to note. If we're giving you something or giving you either giving you a service or a freedom, does it infringe on other people's freedoms? Very important questions to ask. Liberals don't ask these
No,
questions.
not at all. Because I mean, that's the argument I consistently
So these are
have,
limiting
is
principles.
my views are not telling you what you can and can't do. I'm not stopping you from
Right.
doing or owning.
They are within reason, but I think the correlation, I think the point you're making is I am completely in line with is that there are certain things that just like business, and I use it all the time, third and fourth order effects, right? When you're talking about the 120 mile an hour.
That's the other question we ask.
Yeah.
Second, third order consequences.
Yes, consequences. Like I don't want someone to be going 120 down here on 3351 and hit my wife. So what are the consequences of that? Death. There are drastic consequences to that. But it's when we start to go down and we disagree with individual life decisions that don't matter to you, It's when the general public is at risk and life, limb, death, and all these economic things that are very drastic. That's when it's concerning. We can vote on that, and that's with like
it's a simple set of rules for a complex society,
right? And that's why like some of the, and not to get too crazy here, but like I'm gonna stand with this and say like all Black Lives Matter, man, and like that's been the hardest part for me to wrap my head around some of the movements out there right now is that when we're talking about one individual, which was a murder, and everybody unilaterally is agreeing that we need to prosecute and fucking get this guy and put him away. And then we're burning down Black fucking shops, local communities. And I'm like, well,
12 black
are we
police
being
officers
segregating in
killed.
their own essence because the emotional component isn't as relevant to you? Like all American Lives Matter, all Black Lives Matter, like we're all on board. And I want to like, I don't know. I'm too stupid. I'm a fucking internet satirist. I don't know
their
how to
counter-argument.
get past that.
Their counter-argument to that, so let's kind of have the debate. Let me play devil's advocate.
Please.
So their counter-argument to that is their Black Lives Matter movement isn't about all Black lives. And they'll say that very clearly. Don Lemon said it the other day.
Yes, Don Lemon said it when
he's
he was
like,
talking
well,
to
it's not
Terry
about
Crews.
that. It's
not about that.
And he's like, no, it's not about that. It's just about police brutality.
And Terry Crews came back to him and goes, yeah, but when you look at the data, the police brutality against Black men is very low.
But that wasn't the right argument. Well, here's the argument I would say, which is the Black Lives Matter organization. It is the right argument. It's not a bad argument. I guess what I would have said is, well, if that's true, then why does the BLM organization also advocate for deconstructing the nuclear family? Why does it advocate for that? Why does it advocate for all these other things, oppressive patriarchies? And these are basic Marxist. And again, we know that the founders of the movement are Marxists. They've told us that, and I believe them. And I think they have read Marxism too, because they told us they've done it, and they sound like they have. And everything about this movement seems Marxist right from its beginning.
But
so the statement Black Lives Matter is totally unobjectionable.
But you can
I will repeat it all day long.
But you can barely say that without being called a racist.
Oh, no. That's no, but that's it. That's their.
The conservatives are already called a racist, so
we're white men.
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
at this point because
the moment you ask a question, it's that sounds like a racist question. No, it's provide your point with data.
Yeah, there's a difference between the statement and the movement, and we needed to carefully distinguish that.
I like that a lot. I like that.
There's a huge because again, like I said, I'll repeat Black Lives Matter all day long. I'm happy to.
Dude.
I think the statement "All Lives Matter" is not okay.
I like what he said. All Black Lives Matter.
All Black Lives Matter is a good statement.
Merge them together.
But I quibble with you on purpose just to like give you their
agree with
side
that
of
sentiment.
it. Yeah.
I think that there's the articulation of saying all lives matter to combat Black Lives Matter.
That's not a good one.
It's a protest to a protest, right?
Yeah,
so you run into
a
a lot of conflicting statements.
It's kind of like saying like, hey, when you're like, hey, 22 kill.
Right.
And I'm like, well, all people who commit suicide matter.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I'm talking about veterans.
Right, but the problem is messaging.
I understand how much it pissed people off when people say all lives matter.
Well,
I get that.
It was the messaging inconsistencies. Like, because I understand what the All Lives Matter movement is trying to say about it. They say, no, we're essentially saying all Black Lives Matter. We're saying, hey, if you're going to be hard pressed about this movement saying Black Lives Matter, then killing other Black people in the process isn't helping your cause. Yeah. Like, we know that that's their message, but the other side, BLM and ALM are fighting because
nobody explained it correctly, right? Because everything gets like deconstructed into sound bites and memes, and it's not helpful.
All people want is the newest iPhone, man. That's it. That's all they're concerned with.
The newest iPhone is quite good.
I'm just saying.
I got 3 cameras. I want 6 cameras on my next one, dude.
What's going to happen?
I'm going to have so many good
You're going to look like Neo in the Matrix.
Put on the bulk mode after your surgery. Dude,
that's my book. It's called Everyone's Full of Shit. All people want is the newest iPhone.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the easy say, right? But that's not the solution. And I think that there's so many complex issues in all of this. And for me, like, we need, and like, I'll say it now, I've never said this before, but like, I don't live in Chicago. I am not intertwined in the urban side or Black culture, however you want to define that. What we need is a positive leader to come out of these communities and advocate to us how we, who agree that there should not be police brutality, there shouldn't be segregation, there shouldn't be racism, communicate to us how we, as a society, as American people, can help make a difference to impact positively to your communities in the right way. And that's where I'm at, like rioting, burning other black businesses down don't work, like creating hyperbole on news to be more divisive. That's not a solution. That's just people that want to sit in their phones and get mad.
And that's what we got to talk about, which is, and the best way to look at solutions is to reverse engineer it. What makes a person successful, and let's move backwards from that. And again, you don't have to I think you can use common sense to do this, or you can use data. And again, we talked about this a while ago when I said the liberal think tank said 3 things you got to do to be successful in America. Okay, well, why can't people do those 3 things? Like, what's happening that they can't do those 3 things? There's a lot of reasons. Broken families, and which is just a consistent cycle. What government intervention is going to stop that? It's a deep cultural issue. So how do you do that? And we need to be creative about how we think about that. And we should try. We can't just throw our hands up, because it doesn't do anybody any good to throw our hands up. But it also apparently hasn't done any good just to throw a bunch of money at it. That hasn't worked either. The well-intentioned welfare programs that started back with the Great Society of basically giving you more money if you're a single-parent household. And so the devastation that occurred after that, because there's a financial incentive to not have a 2-parent household. Well, and you can see the numbers. You can see the statistics change radically. They basically flip upside down.
But you see that concurrently right now with the COVID stuff is people are getting paid more on unemployment than to go back to their employment. And then that's a very, very hard thing to do, because it's how do you incentivize people to get back to work? Because again, 3rd and 4th order effects, the waiter might not want to go back to work because he's getting paid more in employment. But what happens is that business can't employ people. There's a huge employment issue right now of getting people back to work.
I have a whole bill to fix that. It's called the Jumpstart Act. And I think I got 1 Democrat on it.
Oh, damn.
1 Democrat on
Ounces make pounds.
But they're not into it. I mean, they don't.
That's frustrating.
They don't
to me,
want
man.
it. You know what my bill does? It doesn't just take away the bonus. That's not what it does. It lets you keep the bonus even if you go back to work. That's what it does.
That would be my rational thinking, at least within the confines of the economic progression of what happens with this, because no one, the scholars don't even know.
Yeah. It's
incentivize them getting back to work. It's an local business
time.
owners that can pay their fucking mortgages. Let's get the economy back. But the problem is, right, and I'm sure you can attest to this is a political game, especially an election cycle coming up here at this year. It's let's point the fucking fingers at the Republicans, point the fingers at the Democrats. I'm like, who wins or who loses? I'll tell you who loses in this battle.
Of us.
The American public loses. One party will win, but the American people lose. And that's the problem is we vote people into their positions based off of they need to represent us because we pay our taxes. And as if you're a congressman and you're in the Senate, you're the president, you work for us, motherfucker. And people have to realize that. And it's that's why I've really followed you a lot, is because I feel like you're fighting for what you believe in. You're passionate, you're educated about it, and you're trying to make a difference.
You're not going to get sucked into their little
I'm just
club.
honest. I'm just honest about what I think and how to express it.
Yeah.
Because everybody will have a different opinion on what you just said.
But that's my opinion, right?
No, I know. No.
And I'm a dumb guy.
But here's what I mean by that. Every citizen will say, you're supposed to represent me. So why aren't you doing it? Right? And but the thing is there's 700,000 or 800,000 of them.
Yeah.
And so everybody disagrees. And so all I can do as a representative is tell you exactly what I'm running on, who I'm going to be, and then I'm going to be that. And then I'm going to try to express as much truth as I can about who's to blame when things don't go our way. Because it is true. Everything you just said is true. I'm just sort of expanding on it, I guess. And it is frustrating because why won't they just accept that bill that I proposed? And I'm not the only one who proposed it. There's a Senate bill. Ways and Means Committee is from the Republican side has proposed a similar bill. It's what's the problem with this?
That's what upsets me is nobody is looking at this for context. And that's kind of like what we've talked about the impeachment trial. showed us that everybody voted for one thing.
Everybody forgot about impeachment.
Everybody voted. Everybody voted with their team.
Not even like a thing.
Except Mitt Romney. He was the only one that was like, "Hey, I just saw a trial and voted on the evidence that I saw." It was like, so it's like, people, they're not, like you said, you propose something, and just because it's coming from you, they want to scoff at it. No, we're not going to support that.
There is too much political winning that happens. And I think it is political malpractice to a huge extent.
Because we're not about solutions at this point. We're not about progress.
Right.
Like it.
And I never.
For me, I don't care if I'm sitting in the House and the Democrat comes out with a fucking really good idea. I'm not going to go, "Oh no, I don't like that."
Well, here's the difference, and it's not a both sides issue. A lot of people. I don't think you guys are necessarily saying this, but a lot, especially independents, will say, "No, it's both sides. Both sides do this." That's only true to a certain extent. It's actually not. And here's why it's not totally true for Republicans. Because, again, we talked about this a minute ago. Conservatism is a set of questions that you ask yourself, right? And we can go through those limiting principles very carefully. There's principles that drive our decision-making. There's a framework with which we solve problems. Very important. And those principles are based off of thousands of years of experience. It's ultimately true. Liberalism doesn't have anything to compare to that. What are their limiting principles? Really, what are they? Nobody knows. Right. And if I think if you're honest and somebody's just asking them, and what would they say? Well, they'll say, why did I run for office? They'll say, well, I ran to fight inequality and injustice. I think that's what a normal liberal generally says. That's not a limiting principle. That's an activist cause, maybe a good one, maybe not. But even if I identify the right problem and we all agree on the problem, there's a way to solve it that must be solved within a framework. Yeah, like there's a
that's
process.
What I've never seen from that side.
There is no framework.
I've never seen a solution at all. It's just it's yelling
really
loud.
It's the first thing that comes to mind. So if people aren't getting paid enough, it's like
we should pay them more.
Make them pay more.
$15 an hour for everybody.
And conservatives are like, hold on a second.
Wait.
Hold on a second. So what are the second, third order consequences of that? Do you see that people will hire less? Do you see that there's problems in the labor market?
Companies will revert to automation rather than employees.
Like, there's again second, third order. They don't ask these questions. They don't ask again with redistribution. We want poor people to be richer. Okay, so give them money. Well, just like that, just give them money. What about the tools of success, which we talked about before? Let's reverse engineer the tools of success. What actually works?
$15 an hour employees, great. We'll just go to computers now.
Or healthcare.
So now you've just cost the job market.
Yeah, well, we live in a capitalistic society, and so you have to be understanding that people that are chasing 0.0001 of a profit margin are going to increase that based off of their business practice, and they do that as an individual enterprise and or corporation. But
they just don't understand these basic principles, and they won't listen to the data when we actually show it to them because
that requires work.
Yeah, that's not that much work.
It's out there. All right, I'm going to throw you for a curveball.
Okay,
you ready?
Yeah,
curveball time. Like, I've seen you. I think you've been in like Rogan. You've been on like a huge podcast, and I know you talk politics. Like, who is Dan Crenshaw? Like, where were you born? Why'd you join the Navy? Why'd you become a Navy SEAL? I'm curious about like who you are as an individual, man. Like give me a little backstory.
How much do we make you laugh?
Like your service. Like I'd be curious, man. I'm like on a front because I think when you talk policy all the time, it's a great thing. But sometimes there has to be this understanding of who the individual is. To get a more visceral experience and understanding of why they're acting in this way.
You're always trying to viscerally experience me. Man.
I am. I touch you a lot.
It's awkward to say the least.
Well, you have an eye and I have an arm, and so
Thank you for using. Thank you for not.
Guess what? The guy that eats gas station food is over here. Yeah. Great.
I'm technically a combat veteran, wounded right now, okay?
Combat veteran wounded.
I was going to say, thank you for not
and don't get sensitive on that. Like, half my friends have missing limbs, you fucks, all right? Like, come on.
What is this, third-party justification?
No,
I know a guy that's missing a leg.
Yeah. Crispy, where's Crispy?
Come on, get right here, eat your hot Cheetos.
Like, so where are you born, man? Like, what?
So I was actually born in Aberdeen, Scotland.
Scotland?
Yeah. Yeah, because
Braveheart.
Look at him.
Yeah, well, I don't know what that means, but
I told you Russell Crowe is going to play you in the movie about you.
Yeah,
not current Russell Crowe. Have you seen him?
No, I haven't seen him lately. I'm thinking like Gladiator. Russell Crowe.
No. He thickened up. Like
really?
he weighs like 320 because it's
He looks
for-
like me.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
you're like
worse.
more like Russell Crowe now.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
I think it
that's
was for
kinda-
a role though. It was for a
Yeah.
role. I don't think.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
I see Gladiator Russell Crowe in there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
I
very
see
nice.
it.
I could probably shorten my hair.
Is it? I see him in the Senate floor. Is there no one else?
No,
it's
I
so
see him
good.
being the very calculated in the beginning with Aurelius or whatever his name is. He's
Yeah.
like, well, do you
It's such
think
a good movie.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
are they
Do you
going to make
think what
another
we could-
movie like that? We don't get
They
good movies
haven't.
anymore.
Midway? Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen it.
I
Pretty
loved
good.
it.
Pretty good.
I've watched it
Generally
like 9
don't- I
times.
don't watch war movies very often. Why are my dogs?
Yeah, but
so I'm a guy.
it's the
to
new
answer your
Midway.
question, with 2 little dogs that I brought here.
They're super
And
sweet, by the
They're
way.
super cute. I don't know why they're bothering me so much. Maybe they're hungry. I just fed you.
No, there's food out there.
I was scratching in there, loving it.
yeah.
No, you have to.
Scott. Oh, hello.
That was
So
their-
Scotland.
Oh yeah. So I mean, my dad's in the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
So we're from Houston, and that's why they were living in Scotland. I have no actual
it.
connection to the UK.
Got it.
I was never a UK citizen. We moved to Egypt right after that, and but I
Sharm el
don't
Sheikh?
remember any of this. I've been to the Sharm el Sheikh when I was older. We went back, but I don't remember growing up there. I only remember Houston. Grew up just west of Houston, Katy. Moved around a lot.
Texas, nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and on my dad's side we're 6 generations of Texans, and I grew up moving around a lot. Again, the industry. So it was always between Houston and overseas. Spent a year in Ecuador. Spent all of my high school in Bogota, Colombia.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I've been to Colombia before.
It's
I have
great.
not.
It's a good culture, man.
I like it a lot. I had an enjoyable experience there. I still go back for my high school reunions.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
You
It
went
was-
to high school in Bogota?
Yeah, the whole
No.
time. Yeah, all
Do you
4
speak
years.
any?
Spanish.
You can hear.
I was like,
you can
Spanish,
hear,
Portuguese,
you can
yeah.
hear that in there when he said
yeah. I mean, I
Bogota,
speak it.
Colombia.
I'll do a lot of stuff. I mean, not as well as I used to, but I speak it.
That's awesome.
And so I wanted to be in the teams ever since I read Dick Marcinko's book, Rogue Warrior.
Road Warrior.
Read it
the
like at
first
age
one. Red
12.
Cell was number 2.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
read all
So
those.
it was like a mix of fiction and nonfiction. It's
How long were you in the teams?
10 years.
10 years.
So yeah, 2006.
You get medically retired?
Yeah, I was wounded in 2012 in Afghanistan, and then retired in 2016. So I fought the system for quite a while. I was trying to fight the system, get a medical waiver where I could kind of live in a more normal way. The issue wasn't so much with my one eye; it's the fact that my one good eye is badly damaged. I mean, I have a contact in here
'Cause
that
you almost lost it, right?
yeah, or it was just blinded. Because
That's
the
considerable.
cataract is I still have a cataract. I don't have a lens in my eye, so I wear this very serious contact, which I should probably replace. It's about 2
Can
or
you
3
still see
years
how
old.
beautiful I am, though?
Yeah, I know you're very good looking in person.
And how
Yeah.
fat I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. You're living the American dream. Individual rights, man. You can eat hot dogs. You do.
I haven't been eating hot dogs lately. I've been on a strict salad diet.
Have you?
Can't you see me
No,
spinning
that's
down?
not a thing.
Yeah. You guys have a nice gym around here, don't you?
I have a
It's
home gym.
His house.
Is that far from here? Where are we?
I live 8 minutes away.
8 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to get a
Nice.
workout in, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
Just don't tear your bicep in there.
Yeah. That's true. I've seen it in videos. You got
Yeah.
a big, nice
Were you
gym.
in Hawaii?
No.
Where were you?
Always in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I spent 10 years in San Diego, always kind of surrounding Team 3. Even when I was at Special Reconnaissance Team 1, I was really deploying with Team 3. So a lot of history there. Got to go back recently to kind of an official tour of the whole place. See some of the old guys again. So it was cool. I missed it quite a bit. I left kicking and screaming. I did not want to be medically retired.
Yeah. Well, what deployments were you on? So you said you came in what, 6? 06?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's when I was commissioned.
Okay.
And so you go to Buds, I break a leg, got to do it again. And then,
Did you do Hell Week twice?
yeah, 1.5 times because I broke my leg in the middle of it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Stress. Well, I mean, it's not like break it. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. A stress fracture that turned into a fracture.
Yeah.
Like that. And I know the exact moment that it happened. It's all in the book, by the way, which everybody should read.
Fortitude
Best book.
is what that book
Some
is
say the
called.
best book ever written by a veteran.
Huh.
It's probably better than mine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Nobody knows that.
So yeah,
Let's let the audience decide.
6.
Nobody.
You were done in 6 with training and everything, or
Yeah, 7-ish, and then
How old are you?
Fallujah. How old am
My
I now?
age.
36.
36. Okay. So
Yeah.
did you go to college before then?
Yeah. I was an officer. So
Okay.
yep,
Yeah,
did ROTC.
Give him those eyes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I did the
Yeah.
enlisted round and got the education after.
Yeah.
Well, so what does Dan's world look like? You made a comment earlier about the liberal mentality to essentially change and have prosperous nation. Like you're president right now. I know that's a hard position, but like you're not president. I'm hypothetically placing you in a
Am I
position
not?
of like, are you going to run for president
Not now.
A lot of
Well,
people
one day,
are
maybe?
asking.
one day? Maybe.
A lot of people are asking.
Yeah.
you
There's
don't
a
have to
lot
answer
of
that,
there's a
but
lot of comments that say you and Evan
Yeah.
should run on a card.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not anytime soon. I would say that. I'm pretty focused on this at the moment. Politics has to be a moment. Like it's not like the military where there's sort of a pipeline.
Yeah.
And if you think about it that way, I think you
Are you
make
going
bad
to try and move to the
decisions.
Senate?
Again, I don't know. I can't say these things out loud. It depends on so many
I don't know
factors.
any
It
of
depends on so many factors that it's hard to say.
What is your
If that were
what does your perfect America look like then? Like, because you're obviously trying to implement
Everybody,
change.
yeah,
but
everybody's
like,
trying.
yeah.
what
What an interesting question.
what is like? Nothing's perfect. We discussed that humanity is the travesty
Yeah.
of our own existence, based off of all of us
So-
are imperfect in its own essence. But like, what would be your version of? Fuck this looks good.
Yeah, let's divide it along like a few different categories. Cultural, economic, and political.
Fair.
I think those are good categories because they're definable, and I can define conservatism within those, and I can kind of define what America should look like within each one of those. The economic one maybe being the most complex, but on a cultural level, what does it look like? It looks like a bunch of people that like to wave the American flag.
America.
Okay,
Yeah.
just that's a good first step. We like the American flag, and we appreciate the ideals that America was founded on. We know that it wasn't perfect, right? Because our society didn't catch up with the political ideology that we set forth. But the political ideology is represented by the American flag and the national anthem, and we just need to agree on that. There's no other option. What else does it look like? It looks like an emphasis on personal responsibility. It's a really important tenet of a culture. If you
Holding
don't,
people accountable.
but holding yourself
Yeah,
accountable, and
holding
also,
yourself
but more
accountable.
importantly than that, it's believing that you're in control of your destiny.
Yes.
If you don't believe that, you're disempowered, and you will be self-victimized, and you cannot grow out of that. It's really dangerous, and it's what you want a society to feel like if you want socialism.
Yeah.
That's the first step. You got to demoralize people if you want to get Marxist ideals to take place. This is just true. Okay, so this is a cultural problem that we have. What's another cultural tenet? I think people who live with mental fortitude, because to live in a free society and to be able to compete, you need to have some semblance of
Wanting to win.
non-snowflakiness.
Yes.
Okay, that's important. Moral truth. It's another really important one. We are a country founded on Judeo-Christian history, whether you like it or not. It's just true. You don't have to believe in God, but you do have to accept the fact that we derive our basic moral truth from Judeo-Christian history. 10 Commandments means something to us. We just think they're true. You can't argue with the notion that it's not objectionable to steal. No, it is. It's always wrong.
Yes.
You may choose, I'm not saying everybody's a sinner, but it's just true. There is moral truth. It's not relative. Okay?
I have so many rants to go on both those things. But
Yeah.
please keep going.
Well, yeah. So this is a cultural foundation that we have to agree on. And then let's go to the political one, because the economic one's probably the most complex,
For sure.
and then gets into actual policy. But the political one is important. Preserve a republic. Okay, in the simplest terms, preserve the republic. You have to allow people to govern themselves at least with problems that are solvable at the micro level. And in largely social and economic issues, I think that the federal government tries to do too much of, where that should be pushed down to lower levels where people just have different preferences. We talked about this before. The way we all live together without trying to kill each other is that we're not telling each other what to do all the time. The republic is an
Pulling it
extremely
back. Yeah.
important notion. There's a lot of elements to that. We just have to preserve them, and I think they're being ripped away. And so, well, part of that is ripping some of it away from federal control. I think our courts have gotten too toxic. I think they've started to make laws where they shouldn't. So reeling some of that back in.
Family court is a fucking disaster.
Yeah, and that's more of a state level, but so I look at the federal level, but it's happening at the federal level too. A Supreme Court making decisions it shouldn't have to make or shouldn't be making at all. That's been going on for a century or more. And regulations too. I mean, this again, we talked about reciprocity and equality before, and it's really harmful to small businesses when they don't feel like they have reciprocity with the government. Okay, we denied your permit. What are you going to do about it? Like, well, what can I do about it? I'm a mom and pop shop. Mm-hmm. That's not a constitutional. It's not a founding. That's not in line with our founding ideals. We have to do better on that. And the honest answer to do better on that is to simply have less regulations. Again, simple rules for a complex society, not no regulations. See, the left likes to straw man our argument there and be like, you don't think there should be any rules.
Yeah, but you got a bunch of,
it's like, that's not what we said.
Shit. Like in California, you're not allowed to catch rainwater. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, fuck off.
Well, I think there's a very good conversation in that, in the sense of like, when conservatives usually advocate for less government, it's based off of, from me, a more educated perspective of why we're inhibiting or prohibiting people to do things, right? So like, why can and can't you do something? And when we start to go to a more governed society where we're not letting people do things based off of our own individual prowess and our own individual perspective, and I'm like, Dan, you know what? You can't drink water out of that Solo cup because I don't like you.
Yeah.
You should do whatever the fuck you want, because again, the third and fourth order effects, how does that complicate my life? Right. And that's where I've really learned a lot in the last couple of years, is just like, I don't really care what people do. We have to look at the big picture items and the ethical and moral travesties that are happening and work on those. Like I think about, and I'm just going to go on a little rant here, but like, some legislation that gets passed and what our focal points are, as that I see from these politicians, are focusing on like hyperbole and microaggressions, and I'm like, why aren't we worried about all the pedophilia that's going on in this nation?
Yeah.
Why aren't we focusing on rape? Why aren't we focusing on all these things that are like horrific acts against humans?
Yeah.
Why aren't we focusing on that? But we're going to focus on the Confederate flag. And I'm not saying that that's not a conversation that needs to happen at some point and down the future. But I'm like,
but it's like,
it might mean something
all the
to
air in the room.
The Louisiana guy that grew up the Confederate flag, and that's his tribe mentality. Like that, whatever. That's a sensitivity issue. Fuck sensitivity. I think that we should focus on the ethical transgressions that are happening every single day in this country and focusing on the big picture items. It's just like running a business. Like, I'm not going to worry about, Kelly said this to Sam, when we can't fulfill all of the orders that are going out based off of a logistical issue that happened with her production facility. I'm going to focus on the big picture, make the customer happy. And then we'll prioritize the work effort and the workflow, core competencies, allocate everybody as appropriate, and then work through it in a critical thinking manner. But how do you change like government to do that? I'm far too stupid. I'm an internet satirist. Probably shouldn't listen to anything I have to say, but like, I don't know. And that's where the hard part is, because how do you change humanity when humanity's half the issue?
There's a lot to
there was I threw like a bucket of water at you.
I'm trying to kind of think where to take that. I mean, the nature of our democracy and our republic is trying to figure out how to change things for the better, right? And so it's largely not agreed upon.
But wouldn't you say that's regressive in nature now, where we're like, I feel feelings are feelings, doesn't mean they're fact, but they're my own fact because I believe them. Is that like we're focusing on the small shit right now?
Yeah,
we have
that's true.
A pending economic crisis.
I don't know what else to say except I agree with the lack of perspective that you're observing. Okay. There's a serious lack of perspective in what should be prioritized. But again, it's not politicians prioritizing it. It's mostly the people prioritizing it as loudly as possible. Now, there might be a silent majority that says, "Hey, can you focus on the economy now, please? Like, because I'd like my jobs to come back."
Right.
But the problem is they're silent, and and I believe I'm speaking for the silent majority, but a lot of politicians don't care about the silent majority, or they might represent a district where the majority actually does want them to destroy our monuments. That might be actually true. It's a scary thing to think, but like this is a cultural debate much more so than it is a political debate. At least right now, like what we're seeing right now, and that's a problem. And we have let emotions and feelings drive our political discussions to such an extraordinary
It's like
degree that
all
it's
opportunity.
dangerous.
It's like, if it was so important to somebody last year that this monument come down, where was the petition started to get it removed with a justification letter behind it and everything like that?
Because they were there all along, but they were looking for a moment. They were looking for a spark. Again, and we earlier in the podcast we went through this whole history of Marxism and progressivism and all this. So how do we get back to things like the economy? And so in simple economic terms, the economy. So I'm going back to the three categories, okay? Please. Political, cultural, economic. And again, you have to stick by basic truths to make an economy work. Personal property rights have to be protected. Patents have to be protected. Intellectual property has to be protected. You deserve to keep the most of your success possible, as opposed to the progressive ideology, which is we want to take as much as possible from you. We don't care if you shut down operations somewhere. We just think you're too rich. They never standardize about what's too rich. It's really concerning because there's no standards with that.
Right.
And so it's like how do we tax you the least amount possible in order to do the basic functions of government? That should always be the question we ask. The Democrats ask a completely opposite question.
Couldn't agree more. They look at it from a social stratification perspective as far as a tier system and people have too much money. But the hard conversation, and you don't even have to react to this, is that some people are inherently and innately lazy. Some people are just fucking go-getters. Like I'm somewhere in the middle, but there are people out there that crush life. And for me, I like to think of it in the capitalistic society that like, I believe that output deserves reward.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, and then on that note as well, it's like you have, corporations and granted what they do, what they want with their money, but that's where employment comes from.
Yeah.
And
there's very little understanding of the sources of wealth. The left has zero understanding of the sources of wealth, and that's a real problem in their thinking.
It's so complex. It's not just like, he's got money.
Right.
F him,
but
right? It doesn't work that way.
But again, we talked about this before. Every solution that comes out of the left is it's the first thing that you feel. It's the first thing that you feel. And that becomes policy.
Right.
And they will set up entire think tanks to justify that whole first thing that you feel. It's really interesting. It's an interesting game to watch.
Well, what's that old statement? I'm going to missay it here, but it's like if you're not 17 and you're not a liberal, you don't have morality. If you're not 30 and not a conservative, you're stupid. And I think that because you have a more profound understanding of behavioral patterns with humans, and like I don't have a psychology degree, but I minored in it, and it's like you start to see.
I did stay at a Holiday Inn once.
Yeah. You start to see how people are empowered by power. And a lot of these movements are based on them essentially going exactly against what they're doing because they want that power, they want that affirmation, they want that spotlight.
There's a big spotlight movement, like where it's what can I say that's going to get me in the press as much as possible, and that's where I see a lot of this.
I think so. Let me answer your question too, because your original question, what does a perfect America look like? I mean, a difficult question, but like, maybe a better question is like, what does a presidential 100-day plan look like? What should President Trump be saying right now?
Please.
Because, then he doesn't need to identify that. Like, what does the next 4 years look like? And the thing about conservatism is fundamentally that it is about conserving things that work and then solving new problems within a framework that also works. Progressivism changes constantly. It's like change for the sake of change itself. Yep. And so, but a lot of people are looking for change. And so you have to understand that. And what are they looking for change in? Healthcare. People don't like their healthcare plans right now. I mean, maybe they do if they have like a good one with their workplace. But for the most part, they're too damn expensive and they're too complicated.
The rent's too damn high.
So what do we need? We need to know how much healthcare costs. So price transparency would be a pretty good start. The administration just had an executive order that basically enforces that. Hospitals don't like it.
because they're going to
guess
have to
what?
come out.
It's good. It's good. And we want to encourage more, more like, standalone clinics to operate outside of that. I want to encourage more direct primary care. That's a long, complicated conversation about what direct primary care is, but it's basically, think of it like a subscription service. And you have a primary care doctor you pay like $75 a month to every month. That's your doctor. Now, it's not insurance for catastrophic issues, but it's like healthcare, and it's like a cell phone bill. This is a real model that works really well. We should encourage. We can find ways to elicit more of that into the market. We need more choice. We need more competition. We need more free market in healthcare. But we also want to encourage what the Democrats want, which is everybody gets access to it.
Yes.
So the thing is, but you have to keep quality along with that. And that's what they are willing to give up. And that's not a good thing.
You said it perfectly. I'm glad I let you talk there. Quality equals competitiveness, right? So when you have a non-competitive market, you don't get quality because there's no incentivization to be
you get
to
Canada,
be the top.
you get the UK,
right.
you get
You're the standard. You're not going anywhere else.
You don't get the lasers. You don't get the night vision. You don't get the 160th SOAR. You don't get the best in class unless you're willing to go through the selection process and go through this arduous process to get where you're at. But that's what breeds progression as far as technological advancements and being a clinical person in your profession. I think the medical industry as well. But I do agree in your sentiment is like, I think a weird thing for me with this, and this is nothing with my bicep, but the hoops that I've had to jump through as a non-essential surgery have been pretty significant. And I'm using that as a microcosmic example of what I can't imagine the cancer patients going through right now with the COVID-19 stuff. And it's like, those are the reforms there, which I think that people need to focus on as far as like the basic human rights and the basic like the things that are the core competencies to an American public existence and quality of life that we have to focus on rather than fucking microaggressions.
And then that's where Republicans need to fill the void, because Democrats left this void a long time ago. They haven't been the party of the working class in decades. They moved very swiftly into a politics of oppression, a grievance politics type mentality. And it's very dangerous. It's ripping the country apart systematically. Republicans can easily win if and Trump kind of brought this into the Republican Party in an uncomfortable kind of way. This idea of fair trade versus free trade. And I think as Americans, we probably did lean on the free trade ideology a little too hard and failed to notice that nobody else was playing by those rules. And there's a lot of resentment towards that. And so the left will try to criticize Republicans. Oh, you guys just change on a dime on the trade issue. And it's like, it's a little more complex than that. Because Trump does have some good points. He doesn't always tackle it the right way. I don't know if the tariffs are the right strategy, but it's not incorrect to say that it's been unfair and that we need to address it, and that our working class needs to be able to build more things. Building more things in America should be a pretty high priority.
Yes.
And this is it's simple to say, hard to do, but not that hard to do. One, make business in America more competitive. Our Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did a ton of that.
We're falling back on what you said about policy permits. It's like
permitting, regulation.
Hey, we need to bring businesses back here. Well, and then you go, hey, I want to bring a business to this city. Oh, well, it's going to take 12 months for us to give you the permits to build.
Or if I want to widen a highway or build a pipeline, like, can't discourage these things, especially like natural gas pipelines. If you're an environmentalist, you should be loving natural gas pipelines. And if anything, let's make sure we're building those into export terminals. Again, let's build things into export terminals and ship that to China. Why? Because then China will buy our natural gas, which is cleaner than Russian natural gas, by the way, just because of the processes we use. And then China will use a lot less coal. So if you care about the environment,
these are real solutions, Dan.
But how do you unite the things? And that's like, I mean, I'm too stupid again, but like, I never understood that. It's like, how do you unite the people? And I'm not speaking, I'm generalizing here and stereotyping, but like, let's just say a hyper progressive that's like, the environment matters. People shouldn't hunt.
It just takes time. It takes I've had these conversations and they're interesting as hell.
It's interesting because they're basing it solely on emotional component.
For people who are like open-minded, because some people will have those conversations with you, like they just don't know, right? And like
it's refreshing because you're like, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's interesting, and like I'll be like, and they'll say, no, we got to focus on, they'll think a lot of things that just aren't true. like America's throwing all of its trash into the ocean. And it's like, oh, it's just not true.
Right.
It's just, I mean, it's just fundamentally
No,
not
that's
true.
just not
And like,
true.
they just don't believe it. So it takes 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes to make somebody understand that.
Walk them
And
on.
then they have to be open-minded first. Like, and more people are than you might think, but a lot of people aren't.
Hope, yeah.
And so it's just getting the information to people is very difficult because people have sectioned themselves off from information that they don't like.
But that is the exact problem that I don't know how to combat.
it's a very difficult one to
It's-
combat.
It's like I have so many friends in production in Hollywood and Los Angeles that I talk to, and they're like closet gun guys. They're closet hunters. And they would be fucking vilified, fired from their jobs if they even mentioned that. They did fire for cause for whatever reason. But then I'm like, you have the person firing them that believes in conservation, but then they're vilifying a hunter. And you're like, well, you realize the majority of conservation efforts come from organizations like
Hunting
Bass and
organizations,
Pro
hunting,
Shop and
Yeah.
national park permits and all these things
Right.
that contribute because you're not paying out a dollar.
They just
to-
think you're lying, and then they just think you're lying when you try to tell them.
Well,
these
people
things.
just don't. I mean, they don't have. We are in a generation now where you can be vocal and loud with an opinion about something that you don't understand at
social
all.
media complex.
At
dog.
all.
Right.
Like-
Well, it is what I write about in my book because I'm going to keep plugging that.
Hey,
What's
yeah,
that
yeah,
book
yeah.
again?
I
Fortitude.
forgot the name.
Fortitude.
Fortitude,
American
the best
Resilience.
book on the planet. Next to thank you for my service.
Yeah. I had a
Great book,
dude
by the
write
way.
me the other day. This is just, we'll just get fun for a second. He wrote me, "Don't you ever fucking thank me for your service, you piece of shit." And I was like, wow, you
Wow.
got really offended by my book title. It was a joke.
Such
but-
a nice book
Yeah.
title.
yeah, it was nice. I was like,
Thank
hey,
you.
man,
Yeah.
I enjoyed my job. Thanks for those taxpayer
Yeah.
monies that let me go jump out of helicopters. It was super fun.
Yeah, I loved the title. I
Fortitude,
told you. I think it was an excellent title instead of we haven't even gotten to like veterans issues. The but anyway, the
I mean,
line,
we
the
can,
line,
we're
the line,
past time, but we can go as long as you want.
Yeah, well, as long as it's your podcast,
No,
we can do
shit,
whatever.
we got
I do
Dan
have to.
Crenshaw here, man. You're an interesting
Yeah.
guy. I like this a lot.
The line I wanted to say was we've replaced reason with passion,
Mhm.
and that's a very dangerous thing.
Yes.
We've basically there he is. That's Joey.
I think that would make a really good shirt for your
Yeah.
site, for your campaign.
Oh, it's
Is
true.
reason with the greater sign, passion.
Yeah, reason better than passion. It's true. It's like
I'd wear that shirt.
because people who have started to think that showing a lot of attitude and owning people is better than sophistication.
Owning people. I'm woke.
Yeah.
Well, isn't
Woke,
that,
bro.
it's part of the cancel culture, right? People, if they can't rationalize with an ideology and or no, I don't think the dog wants beer. And or accept that they might be wrong, they want to cancel you. And I can't tell you how many times, I'm sure in your life too, but from my own individual perspective, I've been wrong so much in my life. I've said shit that I regret. I've done actions that I regret. But all you can do is slowly progress forward. But it requires you to really check your ego, especially as a confident dude that was like, man, I do my research in a lot of things. I spend a lot of time trying to educate myself, but I'm fucking wrong more than I'm right.
Yeah.
But you have to be open to new ideas and critically think through them. That goes back to that conservative mentality, which is why I think that way. Is like when I hear an issue, just like in business, the only reason like why three knuckle draggers, JT, Evan, and I created such a large business is because we had a value proposition of what we want to create, what we wanted to do in the veteran space, how we want to change the narrative socially of what a veteran stands for. But there is so many like issues that we've dealt through across the years and even being vilified by our own community at some points. And like, but you have to work through those things. You have to be open to new ideas and you
Of being being sellouts. And we're like,
Right.
what the hell did we sell out? We created our own brand.
I don't
Like
even-
that's
yeah.
But that's the part of being
Yeah.
resilient and not having that victim
Yeah.
mentality in my own. And this is just my own
haters.
words. It's like you have to be tough in life. Like life is not a good thing, and it's hard. But at the end of the day, we live in an American society that is absolutely phenomenal. You can succeed if you want to, and I would gladly welcome anybody on this podcast that wants to sit right next to me and say that you can't succeed. Tell me, like those own freaking.
No, because
issues
you
that you're
th-
dealing
that's
with
the
are
thing.
your
This
own
goes,
constructs,
This
man.
goes back to, having like a broad spectrum of experience. You and I both know guys that grew up in Afghanistan that are now succeeding in America
100%.
to guys that like
Yeah.
guys like E-Class, our first AD, who was in certain regions of the country that were really, really bad, was involved in gangs, and then decided, oh, hey, I want to know how to use a camera. Now he's directing music videos for the biggest hip hop artists on the planet. Like So it's like we have experience with these people that made the conscious decision that said, I want to change my life.
And that's where I disagree hyperly. Sorry, I'll
I
get
have
you.
to pee.
Oh yeah, go pee. Go pee. Go pee. But that's Jared, that's where I absolutely drastically disagree with the progressive mentality is that life is always easy. Like
No.
I'll tell you right now, it's not fucking easy. You hit speed bumps every single day. There's trials and tribulations. There's sacrifices you have to make. But then you have to look at your life and go, what matters most? For me, it's like living a drama-free, happy life. And there's a lot of consequence that comes with that methodology. But
And
you
creation.
work through it.
Creation,
Yeah.
like that's important to us. Like we wake up and we have to make, we have to create.
Yeah, and you know who you are. And I think a lot of people in current day society don't, they're so involved with this fucking phone. Like I would venture and
That's why I joke about that. All anybody wants is the new iPhone.
No, it's
because it's all anybody. Like I was at Sauce the other day, and I was just looking around, and that's all anybody was doing. Like it was just
it's all psychology, right? So it's like my version of how you could actually better reflect yourself and who you want to be would be like like no one's going to do this, but take 7 days, no phone, no service. Don't cheat. Just sit on a fucking mountaintop, go somewhere, and the only person that can talk to you is your own thoughts. Figure that dude
7
out.
days?
Figure that woman out. Figure that transgender person. I don't care who you are. Figure that person out. And your perspective on what matters and happiness in life will be far more profound than you judging yourself off of like social fucking, conformity, essentially, where it's like you're tailoring yourself to your audience and what they want. And that happens in any tribal mentality, any clique, any of all these sub contexts of how we operate as humans. Figure out who you want to be first, and then you have such a far more profound example of like what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
But it's hard. A lot of people won't go through that because it requires work. It requires you to be hyper uncomfortable.
effort.
It's hard, and I'm not perfect, but like, man, it requires work.
No. I've actually been very mindful of that the last few months about putting the phone down.
You have to.
And getting away from it.
You
And
have
it's
to.
much more like also realizing enjoy what's in front of you.
100%.
It's like we all have a party or something for 4th of July or something. We all come together, but then everybody's just like this.
Yeah.
It's like, no, fuck off.
Fuck
Like-
fun. Enjoy the moment. And that's like, not to be a fatalist here, right? But that's in essence what life is. We try to progress as a society and set up future generations to be successful. But at the end of the day, if we're not enjoying our lives, what the fuck is the point of all of this? You have to sit back and go, you know what? I'm going to put the phone down. I don't really care if my Instagram photo that probably didn't do well because it didn't have multicams or a gun in it.
It's going to
does.
be there.
It's going to be there. It's there either way. The reception of it doesn't matter. What matters right now is making my family, my best friends, and everybody around me happy and making me happy.
Inviting another human over to hang out with you, but hanging out with you means you both are just staring at your phone. Like,
And we all do it.
start.
We all do it.
Start. Like actually, like calling yourself out when you catch yourself doing it. You'll realize, oh, okay, yeah, this is actually a problem. Like, why did I come over here then?
I guarantee it's a significant problem in 99% of the
phone.
people listening to this podcast, to include my own life.
All right, I can go 2 more hours now.
Oh, yeah.
2.
No,
Douche.
Got
This
it.
is the
Got
longest episode ever.
Well, you had
we
a
don't
good-
have to.
You had a good bio break. I've learned that in PC culture. I have to say, I can't say piss break. It's a bio break. So,
Oh yeah,
This
Good
PC
idea.
culture? What is
Yeah.
that? I don't
You guys
wanna live
swear
there.
a lot on your podcast.
We do.
so,
yeah, I say that word a lot. I am who I am.
yeah, that makes sense.
I don't
I don't
need
give
it,
a
but I
fuck.
like it.
But I'm just saying, why can't you say piss break?
I can. I was making a satirical representation of a PC culture that
Oh.
it influenced me to say bio break.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're from California.
Yeah, bro. Just
Yeah,
like
so
serves a
am
nod.
I, And you lived most of your life in San Diego.
10 years. It's true. Yeah, it's true. It is the longest
Dude, San Diego kicks ass. Right?
like place and time, I guess. Yeah.
Dude, San Diego kicks
It's
ass.
a wonderful, wonderful place.
Um,
It's very different from all the other
I'm very-
because everything's political with me. It is much more reasonable than the rest of California as far as LA and San Francisco.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
conservatives there, like the microbreweries there. I think the influence of the military culture that's absorbed in the local community has
Yeah.
been a big influence
And
on
they've
that.
fared very well throughout all this.
Yeah.
You know,
I have a very direct question for you.
okay.
Yes.
Why is
It's going to be humorous.
His voice
Something.
is making
Listen,
funny
listen.
intonation.
This is something I need to know for my own personal sanity.
Oh, God.
is there any sort of hot dog legislation being passed around in the House right
what
now?
would the hot dog legislation look like?
I'm just asking. I don't want to be blindsided.
Do
I
you
don't
want
want to
more
wake
hot
up.
dogs or less
I
hot
want
dogs?
more hot dogs.
How could you need? I mean, well, is there a shortage of hot dogs?
There is in my house.
Well, that you have to go to the grocery store. Hot dogs are essentially just
Do you
ground
think
meat.
you
of
have a
all parts.
right to hot dogs?
I
Yeah, do you have a
do.
right?
I do have a right.
Why do you think you have a right to hot
Because
dogs?
I am Lord Hot Dog.
You are Lord
So
Hot
you're
Dog.
placing yourself in a dictatorial position where you feel entitled to having that position as
No,
Lord Hot Dog, not being
I'm-
elected into that by the hot dog followers.
I feel like, yes, I gave myself my own title. And with that title comes entitlements.
We found ourselves a liberal
That was a genius
I
manipulation
just want to
of the
make sure
wording.
that I'm not going to wake up to a tweet for some anti-hot dog legislation from you. And now I'm going to be like, hey, what
I
the
mean,
fuck?
now I might. Just because.
Just
You are a
because.
monster.
I'm voting yes in that. I have no
What,
power.
why would
but-
you? Why are both of you like you're my friends? And you're
Because
like,
diabetes
hey, let's
is real,
try
and
make
I'm
you
worried about your
unhappy.
health. And I think you're a nice, smart guy.
Diabetes is a condition that makes coronavirus worse. So, do you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution?
Wait, no.
I had a really bad joke for
I
you,
got
but I
no.
won't say it.
I'm not eating sugars. It's just dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no
What?
sugar in hot dogs.
Do you really like them that much? Is this a real thing?
What,
Yes.
hot dogs?
Hot dogs? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like,
I got
it's
some.
like-
I got some Wagyu
I
hot
think,
dogs
I think
from
we
Japan.
could work through like
Yeah?
what probably a Michelle Obama was trying to do with the educational system as far as health eating. With Jared as a case study.
Yeah,
because
well
his
intentioned, by the way,
dietary-
but man, those are the worst school lunches ever. Everybody hates the Obama.
Good
school
intentions,
lunch
bad
program.
judgment, man.
Yeah,
Good
terrible.
intention, bad judgment.
Again,
Yeah, but
everybody,
didn't he-
this is the problem with progressives. They think a bunch of scientists can just like make it all work.
Yeah,
It just
scientists don't
never
have
works
personal
that way.
skills ever.
It just
at all.
doesn't work that way. No matter how badly we want it to, it never works. And I find it so interesting because, like at Harvard, you really are with people who are truly well intentioned, and they really think that they've got these like scientific policy solutions, and it just never works. It
No.
just does unless it does work if it's based in sound principle. But they don't.
Or in a vacuum.
They don't confront their ideas, their creativity against principle. This
Yep.
is their main fallacy.
Love this. I'm ready for this rant. Let's go.
Well, that's kind of it. It's
That's
a very
it?
simple
Well,
point.
no.
It's a very simple-
I'll expand
All right,
on that.
back to the dogs.
No.
But more importantly, this is why you can't make everybody get hot dogs.
No, but to compound on that, man, it's the same thing as marketing tactics, right? Not tactics, a strategy. You can look at it from a Harvard perspective and go, have what would Harvard brief probably have the best leading market innovation as far as your product set. Have something that applies and appeals to a specific psychographic or demographic perspective, so you can build personas based off of your consumer behavioral patterns and market directly to them. In theory,
Yeah,
that works.
right.
But
Until
but there is a
doesn't.
sense of human condition and understanding and being intuitive with your own thoughts. It realizes people aren't just going to like fall into that or placate their fucking behavioral patterns and go, I need to buy this because I saw an ad and it's better than mine. There's branding associated. There's cultural movements associated. It is such a larger picture. And then a lot of these companies that I've seen that don't succeed based off of these like fundamental fucking marketing strategies, they completely get so mad after. And
Well,
they're
they don't.
F you, F this, F
They don't
that, F this.
decentralize.
Right. And you have to
They-
realize you failed because maybe it just didn't work. And they look at successful companies and be like, man, I've had like 7 failures in business for 1 success. So it's like, well, 2
You're
successes.
like
It's
the exact statistic, isn't it? Like 7 is the
Oh yeah,
statistic.
yeah.
for, like,
something
We've
like
definitely had 7.
But and that's the thing. Like I said that in my "It's Who We Are." I'd love to do one about you, by the way, for Black Rifle. But
is that on the list?
we
It
should-
it
we
is.
should put
I
Dan
think
on
it's
there.
on the list.
What?
That'd be
What is
wonderful.
it?
We didn't tell you about that yet, but we can.
we
get
have
there.
a series called "It's Who We Are," and we kind of highlight.
It's like a
veteran
12-minute
stories and-
documentary.
Oh, I see.
It's more of
Yeah.
a serious format.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any like good photos of you in UDT shorts and stuff?
Mm.
Can you text those to me?
I have less photos in UDT shorts than you would think, and
Damn
I
it.
like struggle to. I didn't even. I had to like. I don't have any UDT. Well, wait, I thought I found some new ones.
We should start a movement about how us OG guys back in the day don't have any cool guy photos because they didn't allow us to have any photos in cameras in Target.
No, we don't.
Now everybody has iPhones.
I have some cool photos because we had a
What are you
combat
talking-
camera.
You and I
Yeah.
were deployed like 4 years before he was even on a team.
I know. I'm saying I don't have a lot of photos.
Yeah, because we didn't have cameras then.
Are you
Like
regurgitating the
digital
exact
cameras
statement that I
didn't
just
exist
said?
as easily.
Yeah, thank you.
is.
He doesn't listen a lot, you know?
He's got hot dog in his
Yeah, I'm
ears.
start calling you
He's got a
progressive.
hot-
You're my new progressive.
What does that
I have
mean?
a progressive friend, everybody, Jared Taylor.
Is that like special?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Do I get a trophy?
What is this?
Yeah, you get a
Or like
Is it
a
nicotine
metal?
stuff?
Yeah.
Is this like the?
it's tobacco-free nicotine.
I've tried that. I don't like it.
Can I have one?
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess we'll go down this
I
rabbit
want the
hole.
gri-
Yep.
I still like my Grizzly.
Oh,
be
you're still going
So you're-
grizzly,
I'll
huh?
be honest.
So you're
Like-
married with
Like chopped or
Just married with 2 dogs. Yeah,
2 dogs.
We
You got,
loved it.
you got nice little dogs.
Yeah, they're very cute.
Yeah, I mistakenly assumed you had kids.
Yeah, we want kids.
Are you
I'm
getting
trying to have
Jared?
kids as soon as
No.
possible.
Okay. Are you
Yeah, Jared.
Yeah, I know.
JT landing page.
if this isn't overextending my questions, what does your wife do?
Well, she's a dental hygienist by trade.
Okay.
She is starting to open up a small business, so we'll see about that.
If she gets the permits.
Yeah,
It's all about them permits,
It's
dog.
complicated. She's so I won't say any more about it at
Awesome.
this
Yeah, no
point,
problem.
just publicly, because it's just we don't know yet. But when we left the military,
Was she in the military as well?
no,
Okay.
no. I mean, but you know, it's a team
Right.
effort,
100%.
and so she never got another license in Texas for dental hygiene. So really, she just works with me. I mean, we just travel together all the time, and like we're just doing she's just kind of an integral part of what I do.
Yeah.
And like
Completely understand.
and I have so many bosses. It feels like, even though I'm technically the boss, I have, because my district director, she's like my mother. She's just been doing this a long time. She might campaign, she runs my campaign as well. And then my my chief of staff, another just awesome lady who's also acts like my mother. And then my wife, who just also tells me what to do. So I just have so many
A lot
bosses.
of people telling
I'm
you
very
what to do.
yeah. And but it's a great team. And again, you kind of learn this from the military too, just like how to build a proper team and how to make sure that you build that team with people who disagree with you. Not too much, because then it's just nonsense.
Soundboard, yeah.
But people who are like, I don't like your judgment here. And I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
I'm smart.
But I'm
Yeah.
I'm still gonna listen, because I'm also smart enough to listen but then to make my own judgments, of course. But like, so it's a very healthy team, and I'm very, really happy. It's so different than teams in the military, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's all civilians, and we have a couple of vets on the team, but for the most part, it's not. Yeah.
Have you had any of your friends lifelong from the teams or anything like come to you with ridiculous requests? Like just like, oh, you can fix this now because you're a congressman.
So the
Or
funny one- here's the funny one.
what fucked up texts have you got? Like,
lot.
hey man, can you help me with this?
Yeah, I do a lot. Sometimes it's really sad, because it's like, because I have a high profile, and so a lot of veterans come to me with stuff. You guys have a rooster crowing
Yeah,
out
I
here.
mean, there's
Well,
a
you
few.
guys-
There's like
Hell
10,
is going
there's
on,
like 10
Jared.
roosters out there.
This is Jared's
Yeah,
house.
they're-
Hey, it's
everywhere.
the sun setting. Why are we?
There's a
that's what
pile of
roosters-
trash out there. What
That
is
ain't
going?
the burn pile. Why are you looking at the burn pile?
Why are there office chairs around the burn pile?
Because that's
outside?
where we sit
This
for our
is-
meetings.
This is a nice
Haven't
house.
you seen the Facebook
Should-
ads about
Yeah.
lung issues, Jared?
Yeah. What?
Burn piles?
Oh. Whoops.
Huh.
It's like a
All
massive veteran issue we have to go through.
Listen,
Like
yeah.
cancer.
it just makes me feel at home.
Burn- Jeez.
All right, well,
some
I feel
tires in there.
comfortable. Yeah. So
Yeah.
have you had, what's the most ridiculous request you've had?
So let's get back to you burning your. Anyway, well, here's the funny one. A bunch of guys were really mad because the DOD recently went real hard on coronavirus stuff, and they were like, "Hey, no haircuts, no bars. Like, you can't, even if bars are open in where your base is, you can't go." And so all the guys were like, "You better do something about this." And I was like, "It says here you don't have to get a haircut."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you
It's pretty
complaining?
legit.
You've achieved
This is
everything
everything
that
you
we've wanted our whole lives.
I'd be
Being
walking around in the first
military.
idea with relaxed grooming standards, a beard, long hair, and be like, "Spec up, scrub."
Hey,
Yeah.
what's up?
Yeah. We're so cool.
Well, then let's
so cool.
kind of end on this note, then, because obviously, as a medically retired veteran, special operations guy, like I know that the veteran
And you
experience-
being a combat veteran that's wounded.
comma wounded.
That's a wound.
like what are the primary issues you see right now in the veteran community? Because I have my own stance there. I sit in a few nonprofit boards. I've kind of invested most of my free time in doing what I think really matters. But I'd be curious on your input of like how do you see the veteran community right now, and then how do you see the issues that we need to address? I know it's a very broad and general question, but I'd just be curious a little bit if you're okay with that.
Yeah, it is broad. I think I want to see healthy transitions from the military to civilian life because I've experienced that somewhat recently, and it's hard.
It is.
It's hard even for me coming literally with a very prestigious undergraduate degree, immediately getting a very prestigious graduate degree, and still being in a position where, because you're like, because
you realize
it's
how
awkward.
much they take care of you once you get out.
It's awkward because you're getting out, in my case, 10 years. And so you're not going to start at the bottom somewhere else because you're, I left in 2004. Okay. And you're not going to start an executive somewhere because you don't know anything about whatever institution you're applying to, whether private or public. Now, I constricted myself quite a bit. I was only looking at public institutions. Like I wanted to go work for the government and policy. It's very specific. So it's, it is, I would have had a somewhat easier time just going into the private sector, I bet. But I was looking for this. And then I ended up running for Congress. So I wanted to do policy. And then overnight, I was like, I'm going to run because my old congressman retired. And let's do this. That's just how it happened very quickly, like overnight. But there was a time period where it's like, okay, I have a Harvard degree. I am a, Navy SEAL decorated, all of these things, but like you just can't find what you're looking for.
Yeah. And you wrote a book. You're a stereotypical Navy SEAL.
Well,
his book
better looking than most.
His book wasn't about SEAL stuff, though. So I mean, really, is this the first? Is this the first?
I had to get
SEAL
one Navy
book?
SEAL jab in there.
Yeah,
Jared.
but
Come
is this
on.
the first SEAL book that isn't about SEAL stuff?
True.
Yeah, I mean, SEAL stuff is in there. Have you guys read the book? Be honest.
No.
Wow.
You told me months ago you were sending it to me. Then
Yeah,
you were like,
Hold
I
on,
emailed you a
Wait,
PDF. I'm
Jared,
like, I didn't get that email.
I'm going to be a progressive. Have you read my book?
Yeah, I downloaded your audio book. Yeah.
Shit, I lost
I've
that
gone
one.
through your book twice.
It's fun. Your book is nice. It's fun. They're very different, though. I mean, my book is a cultural philosophy book.
Yeah.
It's two things. It's a self-help book with a cultural philosophy layered on top of that. With some war stories in it, mostly training stories, because the training of buds is a little bit more applicable to the lessons I'm trying to give people. And also, I just can't talk about or I just won't. I can't and I won't talk about just a lot of missions. And also, the story has to be applicable to the point I'm making.
Of course.
I wrote the book conceptually first, and then I filled it in with okay, here's the concept I want to drive home. Okay, what have I experienced in my own life that drives home that concept? And also, what research from psychology is there? What history is there? What from the Bible can I quote that promotes this particular concept? That's how I wrote it.
Everything
it's a very philosophical
always been
book.
refreshing because it's always logical. It's okay. Hey, these people said this, but here's kind of the whole spectrum. Like you got to give
people
spectrum.
This. And I was on Jocko's podcast recently, and before I went on, I wanted to kind of reread his book and see just to kind of see what principles there was crossover. And there was one that really stood out to me. It's a very simple thing. And it's tell people why. This is a leader, because his book is about leadership, right? So tell people why. And I'm like, of course.
The definition of the end goal.
Right. There's nothing in Jocko's book that you don't need to read it. You already know it. Trust me. But most people don't know it.
Well, basic principles that are reinstated in your own mental capacity are very helpful sometimes, where you're like, well, I feel that way. And when someone's like, ask why, and you're like, well, of course you'd ask why. And you're like, oh, I guess that's a huge principle.
And if you're going to lead people in dangerous situations, which is what Jocko's referring to, they better know why. Your guys aren't going to follow you into the streets of Ramadi.
They don't know.
Yeah. And then we ran into this in Afghanistan all the time because people are like, why are we going? There's IEDs everywhere. Why are we doing this? That's a really legitimate question 100%. To ask. It's why don't we just stay on the base? Is anything we're doing worth a single guy's life? And the answer is no, technically it's not. But there is a broader mission. And you have to be able to explain that to guys. And if you don't, it's a bad leadership quality. And the same is true with politics. And this is why people, I just have these here's the truth videos. And here's one thing I do that politicians never do and they need to do more of is I address directly the argument made by the other side. I don't straw man it.
And you define why your position
Right.
is on things. That's something that
Yes. I tell
very
what their
few
position
politicians
is.
do. It's like, okay, why did you vote this way, or why did you decide this way? Like, that's what I really love. That's
Yeah.
where you're killing the
Yeah.
social media game.
And I miss
is
doing it because
you're
we're never there anymore.
Yeah.
So like I never get to do these dang videos anymore. It's frustrating, but it's like define what the other person, honestly define what they're saying, and then address it directly, and then explain why your solution is superior. It's a very simple thing.
Best idea wins.
And the Democrats never fight this way. I'm getting attacked constantly with either lies or just character assassinations, or like, oh, you like Trump, therefore evil. It's like, this is not a logical thing to say. Like
you voted for Trump, you're a racist.
Yeah, let's.
What? No.
There's no policy discussion. It's really interesting, and the fact that this is the politician's fault. So some things is like everybody's fault. Like our cultural issues, I think, are everybody's fault. But I think this particular thing is politicians' fault, where we don't fight right. We should fight. We should fight a lot. It's part of democracy.
Yep.
But you've got to address the other's idea correctly, and then just vehemently fight it. This is what I do. And I have no shame in it. And people are like, oh, I thought you said you weren't going to be divisive. And I'm like, no, it's not divisive. I never insulted you. I never told you were stupid. I never said you were a bad person. I just said all your ideas are crap.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's literally my job, and I better explain why.
That's how businesses run.
That's how good people do things, it's and disagree.
Yeah, we have the same like creative prowess in our stuff. Best idea wins, and you can't be sensitive
We're not
that your idea didn't win.
egocentric to no, this was my idea. We have to do it this way.
Like for instance, Jared's ideas usually never win,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
his ideas
We should have
compound.
hot dogs in the coffee bags.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we start thinking about coffee bags and we go, well, what if we did yes and, and the
Hot
developmental
dog
strategy of
flavored
critical
coffee.
thinking with a murder board and use, sorry for the PC fucking thing, but like everybody knows what a murder board and thing in the military is you just attack the idea. You fucking rip it apart until you have 7 people that
You
are
define
logical.
it, the why.
And then you go, okay, this is the best course forward. Let's put it into proof of concept. Let's see if this actually works. And then we'll do a feedback loop as far as how that idea is represented, how it worked logically, and how it was implemented in society or in business. And then you come back and then you do another iteration of that exact thing. And that's the most frustrating thing for me in politics is like, we're not doing that right now.
Yeah, but that's a sign of a good leader too. I remember my first experience working with an ODA team as a super young JTAC. The team commander brought everybody together. He goes, all right, here's what we have to do tonight. What's everyone's idea? It was the first time I've ever seen that in the military.
Yeah.
And I watched every dude with his experience and his expertise and his level put in his input. And then I watched this commander go, okay, let's do this. What you said is good. Let's compact all that. Here's our plan for tonight. That blew me away in efficiency of, and then good leadership. His name is Rob Gully. He actually used to be the XO of Halo School for a while, and he was the team leader. And that was my first experience ever with him on a mission. Was here's what we have to do tonight, guys. What's everyone's idea? It was like, holy shit! That's the first time I've seen real effective leadership of
problem solving
a military
in the special operations community is unique because it's hyper rational. It is murder boarded, and it's like, what are the counter arguments? What are the possibilities? And there's no biases. That's where politics gets all screwed up.
It's where everybody is trying to achieve a common goal, and it's like, what's our best way to achieve it?
The problem with current politics is sometimes the common goals are different. There can be no cooperation when the common goals are different, and there are some issues where we don't have common goals, and that's the hard. Like immigration, I don't think we have the same goals.
No, I think there's like a sense of euphoria associated with all of that. Like there's calculated risks that are absorbed in every decision that you make. And I'm sure all of us have been in pre-mission briefs where we expect to take 5 to 10% casualties. And we're like, how do we get that down to 3? And you work through that problematically together. And then you might go, yeah, we're probably going to take 5% casualties. But, the overall mission success requires a sacrifice of fucking courageous individuals. And then you implement it, and you signed up for that job. And I think that that's where the spirit of the American dream, I hope, never gets lost. There's going to be required sacrifices from police officers, from communities that will contribute to the overall benefit and quality of life of the American public. There is no sense of perfect euphoria that will ever exist. It is incapable. We are the free leader, and we still have all these issues. And the worst thing we could ever do is be regressive in nature and talk about the things that are going to take that 5% to 20%. And I feel that that's where that communication is happening right now. It's like we're worrying about all this small shit, and we're gonna take 20% casualties. I want to let's drive that number down. Let's again say all Black Lives Matter. How do we impact your communities? How do we help you guys out, man? I don't know. But let's work through that. And then but we have to have the right conversations. We have to critically think, and we have to be a little fucked up sometimes and go, this is just, we got to salt that hill or that hill. Like you look at Omaha Beach, they knew they were just going to get fucking torn to pieces, but we had American heroes. Every single person there deserves a valor medal for going on that beach, knowing that they were just going to get brutalized. But what did they go?
It was
We're going to free
necessary.
the French. We're going to come in here in the American spirit, and I'm willing to sacrifice life, limb, everything, because I believe in the spirit of America, and that's what we have to fucking do, man. Sorry. Fuck.
Scared.
Anyways, all right. I'll get off my high horse.
Yes.
True.
All right,
This has
Dan
been
Crenshaw, you're amazing, dude.
Fortitude.
Fortitude. What's your book? You got anything else? Where can people find you on social media, brother?
Dan Crenshaw TX on Twitter and Instagram. Dan Crenshaw TX. You can just Dan Crenshaw anything on
Dan
Facebook,
Crenshaw.
Instagram. I have multiple accounts. It's awkward because it's official and unofficial. But on Instagram, I'm just Dan Crenshaw TX.
Awesome.
That's the best place to follow me.
Well, thank you so much for coming down. Thanks for the good conversation. You're a good dude, man. I can continue the fight, brother. I'm proud of you, and keep it up, dude. So,
oh man, always awesome hanging out with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, check out Dan Crenshaw, guys, and it's Free Range American. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.